Okay,
I was getting Subway.
welcome everybody to our February, I don't even know what the date is, 5th School Committee Budget Workshop. We did have one item on our agenda for this evening, and that is to notify the committee that on the 31st of January, Bethany Dutton submitted a resignation. She has some personal family issues that she is taking care of in her home, and so she will no longer be able to continue on the school committee. And I asked that that go on our agenda tonight because the Blackstone Board of Selectmen is also meeting this evening. And if I can, if we do accept that and can send the note right to them, they will get it posted this evening.
Awesome.
So I will entertain a motion to accept her resignation.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Sadly, I'm sorry to see her go. I think she was a good addition, but hopefully we'll have somebody who's willing to step right in during this fray and join us. So if you will all excuse me, I'm going to let you start.
Sure.
Or Matt, or who was ever doing the first part, while I send this email to Mr. Keys and Mr. Keefe.
Absolutely. Thank you. So good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
This is our third budget workshop for FY20. And before we launch into hearing from our cost center managers, and we'll introduce in just a moment, I did want to take a moment. Actually, Mr. Aaronworth is going to work through this with the committee, but to talk a little bit about the first document in your packet, which is the substitute analysis that we've been discussing in the past couple of workshops. In that, looking at would it be cost effective to increase the building subs at each of our schools to 2, and opposed to having the day-to-day subs. And we know that it's, we know that having that consistency is good for kids. So I want to say that right up front. But we did want to also do a fiscal analysis to see just what we are spending on substitute teachers, and to talk a little bit about if it's, fiscally sound to make that transition from the day-to-day subs to long-term or permanent subs, a second permanent sub in each one of the buildings. And so with that, Mr. Aaronworth is just going to explain the analysis that's in front of everybody, and we can have a bit of a dialogue just about that.
Sure. So the chart that you see actually covers FY18, the entirety of the fiscal year 18, which is the last year that we have record of. It includes long-term substitutes, permanent substitutes, day-to-day substitutes, and where the column that says fill-ins, that represents periods that were covered internally by teachers and or by paraprofessionals that were paid out for those individuals. The top of the chart focuses on the regular education costs. The bottom of the top part of the chart represents the special education costs, as you can see clearly, and it's coded. The very bottom, those last 3 columns that are kind of on the bottom, is a summary that I put together of all of the top information. So if you focus at the bottom, that's more of a concise summary, and what you will see is broken down by school the costs of permanent substitutes versus the day-to-day cost at each building level. So for the purpose of the summary, I will say that the long-term substitutes, I removed those from that bottom chart.
Right.
Those are people that are filling in for maternity leaves, so they really don't have an impact on whether or not there was a building-based sub or a day-to-day sub. So the long-term substitute, while useful information, doesn't really apply to our analysis.
And doesn't long-term sub come out of salary? The salary
Correct.
line
The
is-
long-term sub would be a salary line. The fringe benefits was rolled into the bottom summary sheet. It appears that only one building had a permanent substitute that took the benefits from the district. However, that is something to be considered because it's always the potential for an additional cost. So what you can see is the permanent sub cost across the buildings for the entire district in FY18 was $60,169.50. And the total inclusive day-to-day cost, including the fill-ins, was $56,092. Now, again, that's a conversation for the school committee and leadership to have. There are pros and cons that are not financial. However, these are the numbers.
So a permanent sub costs different depending on what?
This is
As if
just
they work-
possibly the amount of time that they worked. These numbers came from our payroll
Right,
department.
yeah. But they, are there two at JFK? No. Are there?
Why is JFK's
Why have
number
JFK so
double
much
than
more
everybody
than
else?
anybody else? Do they have two? Do we know?
I would need to double check on that. I can get that
Because
information.
it's double anyone else.
Yep, it does look
So
that
I'm
way.
wondering if there's two, and there may be. Anybody else have any? So it's really wash. So from from my perspective, it's essentially a wash. I mean, it's close. We save a little money with the day-to-day than over permanent, but who's to say an additional permanent wouldn't come in at the 8,000 versus the 10,000, I don't know. But I have to believe it's a heck of a lot easier from a building perspective if you have the person there versus trying to find one.
Yeah, I think
And
that.
knowing the people, right, and knowing the children and knowing the,
routines,
yeah,
how the school works.
yeah.
I would just want to add to that, I think the next analysis that we need to do is actually looking at the average number of teacher absences per day.
Right, because a permanent sub's only going to be able to
It's
cover.
one person.
Cover one person.
So I think we have to look at, what I want to be cautious of, and I know the committee, understands this, but adding a permanent sub, which I'm.
Doesn't erase all of this.
That's right, which I'm not, I'm not against, but it's not going to eliminate the day-to-day costs on top of that. So I think we need to really maybe go a bit deeper under the hood and look at the actual number of teachers out.
In addition, long-term, permanent subs become part of the unit, and then,
No, long-term subs become part of the unit.
But permanent aren't?
permanent aren't long?
No.
So permanent are there 180 days, a long-term might be there 90, but they're not getting the same benefit as the person that's there 90?
I don't know. I've got to have to look.
I think that's,
We had to change that.
I
We
think
did
that is how
something
it
with
is.
that.
Last
We did something
negotiation,
different with that, but I don't remember what we did.
And it was after so many days, they went into,
They went into the unit.
pay
After they've
scale.
been there 30 days, or
They're not
whatever it
paid
was,
as a
they
sub.
got,
I have my contract if you'd like.
yes.
Well, I mean, what would the benefit of being
Leave home
a
without it.
full-time
The
building
per-
sub if you get paid
the day
more
that-
on a per diem basis?
The perm,
I guess not having to do less.
It's not having to wonder if you're going to have a job that day.
are laid off every summer.
It'd be
I
right
know
in
that the
the
difference
select.
between the long-term sub is also they're usually content the typical long-term subs are usually content licensed because they have to be in order to fill in for the one specific class on a regular basis.
Sure.
As opposed to the permanent building sub, which goes room to room and is really essentially doing day-to-day sub, just more on a regular basis.
The long-term sub is doing.
Yeah,
their
after
own
30
lesson
days.
plan.
Correct. The long-term sub is also
Guidance
doing their
counselor.
own lesson plan.
Justin
The permanent
counselor,
sub is
school
doing what the
psychologist.
teacher left.
No, permanent subs are not in the union.
No, they're not. They're not in
They're
any
not.
unit.
Nope,
They're paid on the daily rate.
hourly or whatever.
You're right.
So they are not in a unit. They are not in a
Who's not,
union.
who's not in the
Permanent
unit?
Teacher
subs
would
are
be
not.
Yeah.
Paid the
Permanent is just going in.
Yeah,
and-
they're picking up, right?
They're just picking up.
They're just
Just-
picking up.
It's just the convenience.
Of having the body there.
Knowing the kids and the building and the routine.
Yeah.
And I think the principals are saying that too. It's like they're not the crazy in the morning of trying to find those subs.
And all those phone calls and.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of positive benefit to it. I just want to make sure that we understand it wouldn't eliminate the day-to-day costs.
Yeah. Double one line and only have the other one. I don't want to double one line and only have the other one.
Right.
Yeah.
'Cause that'd be a
So this is just for
huge loss.
review, discuss.
Yeah.
Well, because they were.
Everybody was asking
Each
for one.
person
Yeah, they
asked
were,
for
you're right,
one.
okay.
Everybody asked for one, and so we
Deciding whether it was
wondered,
worth it.
is that
analysis.
a cost benefit or
Yeah.
expense?
Okay.
So we can then go a step deeper and look
Yep.
at the actual, average number of folks out on a given day to
Yep.
get a sense of what, so to Jack's point, we don't double one line inadvertently and then end up
Right, still paying the
still
same
paying
amount.
out what we're doing.
Well, I know that you've already done some routine, exercise like that, because I remember seeing a spreadsheet that you shared with us about a year ago.
Yes,
So, I'm sure you could,
just update it.
yeah.
Absolutely.
But this is odd,
The number.
yeah. Because we don't, I don't know, it's just odd.
There's no numbers there's no staff count on there. We would need to know.
Well, that's what I'm trying, that's what I'm doing in my head, like how many teachers are in each place, because it's not coming out the way that I would think that it would.
But I think the bottom line number, that grand total of,
Correct, is what's important.
116,261.75, that's a healthy number.
It's a lot of people missing a lot of time with their young ones.
That's right.
Okay,
Right,
thank
some
you.
more to come on that, but. With that, we'll start the workshop for this evening, and, we are going to begin with athletics. So Athletic Director, Jill, thanks for being here. We appreciate all the hard work that
Yeah,
you've put into this already.
Papers that you've given to us. No, it's actually it's incredibly helpful.
Okay, so which one should we start with first?
We can actually start with the existing and new materials.
Okay. So existing materials, basically, it's just the supplies needed to run an athletic program. So game balls, scorebooks, medical supplies, protective equipment, anything that is needed to run a program. There's really hasn't been much added there. The new materials that I'm asking for are football helmets. So our football helmets actually expire next year, and the program that we are part of that does all of our reconditioning for our equipment, they enrolled us into a trading program. So the helmets that are not expired right now, they take and they give us new helmets at a cheaper cost. So instead of ordering 40 helmets, we do chunks of 8 at a time. So it ends up saving the district some money, and it gets the team with the updated equipment. And then the cost is for 8 helmets would be $1,600.
So is
boys-
it only 8 that we need, or it's
So-
every 8?
So we did 14, we have 14 new helmets now, because I started this with our last year's budget. And then with adding the 8 more, they'll have enough for they'll have enough for half of the team, essentially.
And so does it cycle, all of the, do all of the helmets expire in the same year, or they're
So,
scaffolded? So how many do we actually have to pay for this year? Is it
so this
just
year,
that
we're only doing 8.
Okay.
That's all I put in for the budget.
And Jill, I think the way you were explaining this earlier to Matt and I is that you've set up a rotating schedule so that they all don't need to be done at the same time.
Yeah, so they won't all be done at the same time. They'll be
So
kind
every
of
year it's from
filtered.
like 8 to 14.
Yes,
Okay.
until we have a
How
whole.
long does a helmet last?
So we bought helmets when we first started the program, I want to say in 2006, and they expire 2021.
Oh, okay.
So it's in 2 years.
But
So-
we'll have, by that time, refurbished, or whatever.
Yes.
So the plan is
Recycled.
to do it in small.
In small chunks of helmets, so we're not buying 40, like I said, 40 brand-new helmets right off the bat,
Right.
because that would
And
be.
nobody will ever play with an expired helmet.
Correct, yep. And then for the 2 teams that are up for uniforms on the uniform cycle, which I believe you guys have that as
Yep.
well,
so
is boys basketball. And I did 18 uniforms, 18 home uniforms, 18 away uniforms. And then girls tennis is also up for uniforms, and they only need one set of uniforms, and I did a total of 12, because usually we keep anywhere from 10 to 12.
And so their old go down to the JV, is that what happens? Or-
That's what
Yeah.
we've been doing in the past, yes.
Yeah.
And the last item, the tennis courts are kind of in rough shape. Every year with the winters that we've had, the cracks get bigger and bigger and bigger. I did reach out to one company to get the whole surface repaired. That is a huge number. I am going to look into some other companies that will come in and just kind of seal in the cracks.
I know you weren't here when it was last done, but did we I feel like we resurfaced the entire tennis court when we did the track. And that was before your time. That was probably
Before my time.
2013? 2012
I can find that out.
or 13? I don't know how long it's supposed to last, but is there, I mean, have we ever had it repaired since then? Is there any kind of warranty?
For the track or the tennis court?
We did, I feel like, so the track was done, and I feel like it was, we just did them both because it was the same
price of one?
surface.
I wonder if it was the same company that would.
It was, that's why we
Leftover
ended up doing
material.
it.
Okay. I mean, I can definitely look into that too.
But I'm just curious as to why that would be in such rough shape and the track.
I just, I don't
Yeah.
know, yeah.
It would definitely have been, I want to say spring of 2013, it wasn't, which one was my first?
Okay.
I don't know.
Let's say 2013. Let me know if I'm right. I don't know. It
That's
could-
good.
well,
I can check that for sure.
Just curious, I don't know if they're
How many courts do we
warranted
have?
or.
3. I mean, there are companies that can come in and just seal in the cracks, and then there are, like the company I reached out to came, they did our measurements, and they wanted to redo the whole entire thing. Does the whole surface need to be redone? No, we could probably get away with just having the cracks filled in. But there are some pretty big ones in there that have weeds growing through right now.
It's an oak tree on the tennis court.
Is there a boys tennis team? I don't even.
Yes,
So they'll play in the spring?
This spring, yes.
we're hoping.
Hopefully.
We're recruiting boys for the boys tennis team, so.
That could be
You know
a
any.
really good segue into
Yeah.
the next
We-
document.
Um,
And so Jill took quite a bit of time to go through each of the 3 seasons that we offer athletics. Every single one of the sports, varsity and JV, did an analysis of 2016, 17, and 18 enrollment in each one of the athletics, and then was able to look at current enrollment and patterns and trends to look at a 1920 projection. So the numbers that you see in front of you are kids, actual kids, and then estimated, again, based on prior analysis, user fees and gate fees. So Jill, I don't know if you want to walk us through what's
Sure.
there, what you got some highlights too, what the highlights are.
Yeah, so I highlighted kind of a couple of sports that jumped out at me as to areas of concern. If you take fall season, and we had this year with girls, JV soccer with just the numbers aren't there. I mean, for JV soccer total, we had 11 kids, and that wasn't including the 4 or 5 girls that were swing players on both. Looking at the 8th graders, the 7th graders that will be 8th graders, and then give or take a couple 7th graders or 6th graders that will be 7th graders next year, it kind of gives us 9 players, and you need 11 for a full team. I know last year it was very challenging for the JV team to kind of exist with such low numbers, and I don't want to have that happen again and have the kids get a little discouraged when there's not enough kids, or they're playing teams and playing 8-on-8 or with on a full field. So that was one sport that kind of jumped out at me. Cross country has been really low, especially on the girls' end. We do have, the middle school team is pretty dominant with consistent kids coming in and out. But that was another sport that kind of jumped out at me as well.
The girls and boys, unlike a soccer team, where they go together, correct?
Yes. But for here, I kind of broke them into two.
But when they travel together, but when they are competing, cross-country, they're competing boys against girls, right? It's
Boys
not
against
separately.
girls?
it's boys and girls.
They kind of all run together.
So we've never had enough girls to place
No, we haven't.
in the last.
If we didn't have enough, so you need a
Six.
certain number of players in order for you to be considered a scoring.
Is it 5, Jill, or 6?
It's
When I was
six.
running, it was 5.
Six,
Oh, no,
I
it's
believe.
6.
So when we play against teams that have bigger numbers, we kind of, it's a forfeit, essentially. But the kids still get to run, they still get to get
Their
their
times.
times. And
They can still qualify for
Yes.
state, whatever.
yeah, because cross-country is
It's
kind
also
of,
very individual too.
it is. It's a team, but it's a team that's individual.
But from our perspective, it isn't. We're not transporting 4 girls.
No,
Where
they
they're
would
traveling
travel
with the
together,
boys.
correct.
Whereas when you look at the girls' JV soccer,
They would travel, for the most part, they travel with the varsity girls soccer team. The teams that travel separately, and when we get down to spring, that's kind of like the tennis teams that are the smallest teams that travel separately. And I'll get into that in a minute. But winter, I don't see any issues with any numbers in winter. I know we had a small number in winter track this year. This was our smallest number. We only had 14 for both boys and girls. So we had a very, very small winter track team. But I will say that Telstone has been great with, if Douglas is going to the same meet in Boston, we kind of,
Pick up one and pick up the other.
yeah, we carpool together. Same thing with Nipmuc. They also use Telstone, so I was able to save some money sharing buses for cross-country as well as for winter track, and we'll probably continue that hopefully in the spring. And like I said, Telstone's been really good about, this team, this school's going, why don't we kind of piggyback on each other.
swimming. Did anyone
Swimming, we
comment?
We had one athlete that was all for swimming, and unfortunately, just the transportation part didn't work on her end, so she didn't continue with that. But I will say from the one girl who plays on our ice hockey team, I went to see her play, and she's playing the whole game, and her parents were very, very excited about, that we started this co-op, and I've heard from a couple parents from the middle school that are thrilled to have it, so when their kids can come up here and play. So, and I think,
But swim will still be on the table.
swim will still be, so we have
2 years.
another year with swim. So hopefully we'll get more kids to come up to do the swim co-op as well. Boys tennis and girls tennis. Boys tennis is kind of where is another sport that I've kind of concerned with. I know this year we may or may not have a team. The numbers are that low. I'm actually meeting with any candidates that want to play on Friday, and I'm hoping I'll get a number. But if we don't have 7, we don't have a team. So that's kind of the struggle there.
I don't understand, can you explain to me the user fees, the program user fees? So I thought anybody who was in a user fee.
Yes.
Not if you're free
So,
lunch.
but if you're free reduced lunch, you don't. So
Right,
these,
okay, yeah, okay, but still, like, some teams have user fees and some teams don't.
so I lumped all field hockey together I didn't separate it with JV field hockey user fees and varsity field
Gotcha.
hockey
So all
user fees.
volleyball's together and
Yes.
all of soccer is together.
All of soccer's together.
Following
all
you
of
now.
Cross
Okay.
country's together.
Because I was about to tell you to go join the girls' basketball team. There's no user fee, but forget it.
There is, I can assure
So
you.
every sport pays a user fee, and again, these were based off of the user fee reports from both assistant principals, which shows what kids have, or how many free and reduced lunches we have. So that's kind of where that number came from, give or take. And then gate fees, again, are also an estimate based off of the past couple of years. And the gate fee for basketball is for both boys and girls.
And I appreciate, Jill, you
Yeah, this-
putting this
yeah.
all together in one place. I think it's really helpful to be able to see not just the projections for next year, but the historical piece to it, to look at what the enrollment was. And then also having the user fees and the gate fees all in one place. This was really smart. I'm glad you did this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Football team's holding its own.
Can I just backtrack for 1 second?
Hmm?
The uniform, or maybe it was in front of, behind it.
Yep,
Going
the
to
next,
this next?
yeah, that's
Oh.
okay to go to the next one?
Sure.
right.
The uniform cycle?
I thought I missed it.
So, can we just do soccer for a second?
Yeah.
Is there any, I think that you looked into this a little bit last
Do a
year, of any
co-op?
co-ops?
Yes, and
This?
you know, that's not off the table. I can definitely, basing off of our numbers, it could go two ways. We could try to find out a team that would co-op with us that's willing to let us be the home
Right.
school, or we do a year with just a varsity team and, you know, hope that the next couple years we'll have enough for a JV team.
When you do that, what happens to middle school? What happens to the middle schoolers who play that sport?
So if we didn't have it, let's say we didn't have enough varsity players. So let's
So,
say
just for clarification, soccer does not have middle school.
They do not.
A middle school league.
No.
So it's JV or varsity,
Seventh
Correct.
and
right?
eighth.
So the eighth graders
Sixth
can
grade.
play.
Is there an option to bring it down to 6th grade?
I mean, I didn't think of that. I mean, that could be an option, but
Or does that make it a true middle school team?
it would
I
just be
don't know.
tough
I'm
because for majority of our schools that we play in JV are kind of in the same boat as we are, where their JV teams are dominantly middle school kids. With the exception where there's some schools that we play that will have, you know, a little more heavier on the 9th graders versus their 7th and 8th graders. So it would just be a little challenging if we did include 6th graders. I would just be a little concerned with having a 6th grader, let's say, if we play BVT and their JV team is strictly a JV team. And then we have our 6th graders playing against more high school kids.
Are there league rules though? About sixth grade seems.
Are there middle school soccer teams where we could actually do middle school,
The
a true middle school team?
Misco Hill has a middle school soccer team. They do more of like a recreation, as well as I believe Douglas does too, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
I mean, would there be competition? Would we have other
we-
teams to truly
We
play?
could have other teams. It wouldn't be a full schedule, and then it would also kind of interfere with our varsity team, where now we're playing, you know, a varsity JV, which is tradition, and now I'm scheduling games with those schools. They may not want to play us because we don't have a JV. You know what I mean? Like our middle school teams.
I would just hate to lose it altogether. I mean, and if there are those options. But back to Tammy's question, I think what you were getting at is what happened. We've had many middle schoolers playing varsity level. If there is no team, are they still going to be able to try out for varsity?
We would need to put in for a waiver to have them play at a varsity level.
Which
and
is
the
what
MIA would
we
Which
have
can
to.
go down to what grade level? Eighth only?
We could do 7th and 8th grade. So
Seventh
the way,
graders can play on a varsity
Yeah.
team.
if the waiver gets approved. So if we didn't have a JV team, we could put in for a waiver and they could play at the lowest level at the high school, which in this case would be varsity
varsity.
would be the lowest level.
There is a large population of fifth grade girls who are going to be sixth grade
Sixth grade next
though.
year.
They have travel teams, and they've been consistently, so they're coming.
And I hope
But
that's.
no, but I'm just saying, there is like
Unless
a,
we change
it would
it.
hate to have it go away that you can't get it back, because those girls are, there's like, they've been playing since they were young, consistently together.
Well, I think what we've seen, and correct me if I'm wrong, is even because we don't have a place for the sixth graders, you'll notice that if you had broken up the cross-country by grade, there's usually a bubble of sixth graders that do it for that year,
And then-
cross-country, and then they're gone, they're off the cross-country team, and they're on their soccer
Right.
teams for 7th and 8th grade.
I mean, I can reach out to the surrounding schools that we play and just ask them, do you have sixth graders on your JV? Do you include sixth graders in your waiver for JV for soccer, and kind of get feedback from them? Just so we can have an idea of what we would be, how they would be playing.
I would definitely like to see the options on that.
Yeah, I mean, my fear is if you're a super soccer-minded family and suddenly there's no soccer available for years, do you school choice out? I
Correct.
mean,
And I would hate
it
to
seems
have that.
scary to me that soccer would lead my kids' academic choices, but they're there.
Nope, I understand.
Does and it
and-
will.
It
And
does and
I
it will.
don't want at all, I would not want the program to not
No,
be
right.
there, but if we don't have
The numbers.
the
Yeah,
numbers,
field the team.
I also don't want the kids to have a situation where they were in this year either.
Well, right, it's,
Seemed
we're not,
unfair
we're
for
not
them.
doing it because, or we shouldn't be doing it because we simply want a team. We should be doing it because it's a positive experience for the people who are doing it. And if they're not having a positive experience because they aren't fielding a full team, then I think there is a question about whether or not you
You think
continue.
there'll be interest in a co-op?
With soccer is tough. I mean, there's not many schools. It's kind of like in girls basketball when I reached out to get a co-op. Either they wanted us
to go there.
or they kind of looked and said that would never happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it is something I can try to look into again.
But I still feel like we've just tossed around a lot of other options, a lot of options that I just want to put in, like, to a list so we know what we're waiting for. So a co-op,
Yep.
definitely an option. A true middle school team, or seeing if 6th through 8th can play on a JV
Okay.
team. I would like to see the answers to,
And Jill, how does a co-op work? So, I mean, just worst case scenario, if a team here had to
Go
go
someplace
into
else.
a co-op, and then suddenly you had the bubble of fifth graders that gets up to the 7th, 8th grade year, can you say, oh, thanks, we have enough people? Like, how does
So a
that work?
co-op, the agreement is for 2 years. So if we were to co-op, worst case scenario, let's say we were to co-op with another school and they were the hosting school. Our kids are, part of that co-op for 2 years. And then after 2 years, it gets renewed.
And so I don't see lacrosse on here as a co-op. Am I just missing it?
No, I may have not have put that one on
Okay.
there.
Do we have that?
We do. We have a co-op with Hopedale, and I must have left that one off. but
Okay,
I
I
can
didn't,
add that to the document and then resubmit
So
it
this
to
would be our second year for that?
third.
Oh, okay.
Third.
and are we in a new,
We're
entering
in
a new year for
a new
football?
year for. Nope, football. We were in a new year last year, so we're in their second year.
Is this 31 with our co-op?
Would a tennis co-op make sense? I mean, since our numbers are so low there, or is that a different?
So I actually brought that up at my AD meeting today to see if anyone was interested in boys tennis, because Nipmuc does not have a team, and either does Douglas, but they don't have any interest in any kids that need a place.
So we're talking about co-op extensions. Is Bellingham going to extend our hockey?
With hockey, I'm hoping that they will. I don't see why they wouldn't, especially with our numbers that
Yeah.
we've been giving them.
Good. I didn't know if they had new numbers on their side that they were.
So, and they seem pretty happy with the way the co-op's been going.
And I think we also have to have that tough conversation. We're saying co-op, how do we keep this? We've added, in the last few years, we've added a lot of co-ops, which we have to be realistic and know that that has taken away from numbers from some of the other sports. So with that being said, if we have to let said teams go,
Yeah.
I mean, we
The
have,
co-ops.
we have, in the past 5 years, it's been approve a co-op. We've definitely
But we've done.
added to
we've
our
done
programs.
Lacrosse, swim,
Which I think
Girls
lacrosse
ice
girls
hockey,
only
right?
had
Boy-
2 or 3
girls and
players
boys.
I
last
think it's
year.
actually may only be one this year.
Yeah, so the numbers aren't big
Yeah.
that are going to the co-ops.
and I can't believe a hockey player
Would
is
be
going to
playing
be a
football
basketball
instead
player
of basketball.
or anything else during that season. They might do something else during, and I don't believe a swimmer is going to, I mean, it's like, I realize some people do sport for the sake of doing sport, and it doesn't necessarily matter the team. They just want the experience of being on a team, and they'll go to, what's available to them. But I mean, the people going to the hockey co-op, and Tara can tell me if I'm wrong, are probably kids that have been playing hockey since they could
yeah.
crawl on the ice, and they're not looking to play basketball or
Similar in
anything
swim
else.
too and lacrosse.
Yeah.
Well, those spots are hard to.
Yeah. So I'm not sure that it takes away the numbers from anything else. I think our low enrollments take away the numbers. And so that leads the question, do we need to continue to field each of these sports?
Which I don't think is something we're talking about tonight. This
No,
is just,
no.
right.
Yeah, and I think what, Jill, if I'm understanding this correctly, you've flagged the ones that are of concern.
Yeah, and that's not.
And others can't be discussed, but
No.
you've highlighted the ones that are on your radar.
And
in
just
terms
because
of-
they're on my radar doesn't mean I'm gonna say, oh, we're not gonna have it next
Right,
year.
right,
It's
right,
just,
right, right.
you know,
Got that.
brought to my attention that, okay, this is an area where we need to maybe promote our programs more and try to get those kids to come out for soccer or for cross country or what, boys tennis. You know, and
More of an anticipatory piece than
Yeah.
anything at this point.
Girls tennis.
I mean, clearly things are, you are doing that. Clearly you are doing, because I remember you coming to us and saying, I don't know about volleyball, I don't know, kids don't know, and, I mean, clearly it's not growing leaps and bounds, we don't have the people for it to, but, clearly that's growing.
I think
And-
what helped volleyball definitely was we included 7th and 8th graders in volleyball, and we didn't do that a couple years
But
ago.
there's a prime example, like you just said, the people that are playing hockey aren't doing, our field hockey numbers have suffered for years. We're in a co-op with Douglas, correct?
Yes.
They come to us. But volleyball has certainly hurt that sport, because I would see those,
Volleyball's not a co-op, though. The
no,
point you made was
we had
co-ops.
to add a co-op for field hockey to our fall sports after we added volleyball. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but that's just an example of the point I was trying to make on, we have added, and other sports do suffer. Whether it's by 3 kids, 5 kids, or, I mean, I remember when Jill came to us for the field hockey co-op and was saying, we don't want to lose our team because rebuilding is, and I just, we love there to be options. I'm not, that's all I have to say.
We did lose golf.
Yes.
did what?
We did
lose golf.
golf.
It was approved and never started, right?
I don't
Yeah,
think
that
it
was
ever
the
got
year I
It did. It got approved with
started.
volleyball and football.
No,
Um,
we approved
I-
volleyball and football and not golf. It was presented.
Oh, I was
But
going to say, I
maybe-
remember it being.
It was on the table.
Thank you for the uniform thing. I've
You're
been
welcome.
asking for this for since I got here.
The what thing?
The uniform chart.
I heard you say
Where
thank you for the
everybody-
unicorn. I'm like,
No,
oh.
the uniform.
Yeah.
Everybody mentioned this, but no one had a copy. All right.
And if I could, just one thing I would just want to weigh in on with this. When I look at the numbers, there are hundreds of kids not involved.
Correct.
And to me, that is a major challenge. We've got to get more kids involved. And so, you know, I'm not 100% sure how to do that. But we've got to really think about the recruitment piece and how do we get kids to really plug in. And I think when the kids plug into things, they tend to do better all around, you know?
And I think, I know, you know, some of the incoming freshmen, they don't know what we have. They're, you know, they come in and they're, oh, I didn't know you have this team. So maybe trying to do some sort of night where we broadcast all of our sports that we have, you know, to have those younger kids almost see what we can offer.
Well, and I think that's a challenge, and that's one we have to take on regardless, because high schools are not a monopoly, and people have choice. So I think if we're not doing that level of recruitment work, that's a problem on a bigger, kind of on a larger scale. You know, our freshmen, at least coming from our middle school, shouldn't come in and not know what we offer, right? So I think that's a valid point and one we have to take on at a bigger level with that.
And I think, big picture, Jason, a lot of it goes to, you know, your strength of your youth programs. And even, you know, even in, you know, BMYSO, the soccer organization, you know, numbers are low there, too. You know, there are so many kids that are sitting on the couch playing video games at that young age, and then they don't feel comfortable coming in after the fact.
Virtual
so.
soccer
Virtual soccer.
instead of
On the
actually
Wii.
playing.
At least do it on Wii. They don't. You can't play that anymore.
Yep. As Tammy mentioned, the other piece that you have is your uniform cycle.
Yep.
What did we approve not that long ago? JV baseball, the boosters
The
was
boosters
providing?
are buying.
Yeah.
They raised for them, right? They fundraised for them.
Yeah.
So something may have been replenished without being on this list? Yeah, because we did baseball.
No,
that was
because
last year.
baseball, they
Baseball
bought
was-
their varsity and we're supplementing their JV.
Yeah, that was bought off of,
2016, 17.
yes. But that,
But
the
the board
JV.
track team hasn't gotten anything in a long time.
No.
Boys track has not gotten anything since 2010.
Correct.
Am I right?
You're right,
Or
so,
do they not, do they just?
I
don't
mean,
know,
the-
what does track person wear?
Short shorts?
Actually, all they get.
you know, and
They're called singlets, right? Is that right?
they, yeah.
Mrs. Schaefer? Yeah. You're a runner. And really short shorts.
Do they buy their own?
They have their own shirts, but their shirts are actually their tops, I should say, are in decent condition for the most part. We haven't had a strong need to get them because the numbers have been kind of low too.
Okay.
But are those interchanged with cross-country? Because they're not on the list. Or am I missing it?
So when I started here, we had indoor track had uniforms, cross country had a uniform, and outdoor track had a uniform, but it was all the same uniform. So instead of having each team have all different ones, I kind of just gave one uniform out versus
It's all this, it's basically the same
it's
kids.
the same
so.
uniform. It may say cross country
Some
on
of them
it.
say Hartnett
The
cross-country.
middle school ones will say Hartnett.
In the middle school track, say Hartnett.
Hartnett. They use the same ones as cross country. And then track uses the same ones as cross country as well.
Do they, just to clarify, do they track uniforms say cross-country on them?
Some of them do.
The cross country uniforms have the XC on them, but we don't issue those
To the track teams?
to the track teams.
Good, okay. Because they are different sports.
They are, yes.
They're very different.
I know, and I did all three. I'm
And-
sorry, that's like a sticky thing for me.
And it's hard when people assume they're the same, but.
I didn't like running track
They're the
races
same
and
style
cross-country
uniform.
singlets. They're actually called singlets, but, you know, or tops.
I thought the
as-
wrestling ones were called
Tops, as
singlets.
you two refer to them.
So if we ever
Yeah,
rotate
singlet
them
is- it's
again,
short
it
shorts
would be
that are
worth
important.
just getting something
Short
that
shorts.
says, like Chargers,
Yeah.
that's that.
Which is what they have now. I believe they have, it says Chargers on it and they have the track foot. With the wings.
Sneaker.
Yes.
The winged foot.
The winged foot.
Winged foot.
Run,
Which I
baby,
know is
run.
not the right logo for cross country, but
It's all.
They're similar uniforms, so
Looking at Jason, right?
same kid.
It's okay, yeah,
It's crying inside.
I'm particular about like 4 things, and that's one of them. So.
This is good to know.
Anyway. So what do you generally then look at the?
So I look at
Because
the
it's not really a cycle. It's kind of like you look at the uniforms and you go, we need these.
So it's a cycle, and then I look at condition of the uniforms.
Okay.
If they're looking like they need to be re-upped, then I request to put them on the budget.
So girls' middle school basketball is not on here at all, and I might be wrong, but I don't think they've been replaced since before 2010.
So
Girls basketball.
But middle school, the boys' middle school
Middle
basketball.
school boys are wearing black right now for their home uniform.
Did I see? They just got them in
That's the only
16.
middle-
Every other
So it
middle
says
school team wears
BMS.
purple.
Yeah, that's the only
There's
middle
not a-
school of anything.
that was the only middle school team that we've ever bought uniforms for, and that was the year that I started.
So, is there something we could do about that? Because they don't even all have the shorts.
Yep.
There weren't enough this year for the team. And they're definitely showing their
can-
age,
Add them in.
girls. I would just like to see a price to try to get them
Sure.
for next season, but.
Yep.
And it becomes they're the hand-me-down, so you have 3 different jerseys out there, some of the same numbers,
Yes.
and
Which is a
no
problem.
matching uniforms, because some of the girls are wearing black shorts, some of them are wearing purple that were issued, some of them are wearing purple hand-me-down JV shorts. So I just think that is a team that would deserve a replenish,
You say girls?
and a decent number of them, because
Well, but this,
they don't have a
last
uniform.
year, we bought girls basketball varsity and JV, so there should have been something that came down.
There was uniforms that came down last year, but
There weren't enough.
they
of them.
didn't, no, they didn't fit the girls didn't like them.
Armholes go down to their waist. They really need their own.
Are they too big, or are they too small?
They were, some were too big, I mean, some of them are wearing their shorts right now.
Yes. Some of the hand-me-down shorts were handed out. The jerseys were, they couldn't wear them,
Yeah, they're too big.
right, under the, but they didn't even get those this year, right? They didn't even come down
No.
for them to
I
use.
gave them
They have the
the
true
middle
middle
school specific uniforms based off of the feedback I got from people from last year. So rather than giving them both and
Mixing match.
trying to please everyone,
Which clearly you can't do.
Not with that.
So I'm not saying they need to be on a rotation, but I think they are at a point where they need to be.
So we'll get the cost estimate of those.
Okay.
And then, my last question about uniforms was, I think one of the first years you were here too, we purchased warm-ups, generic warm-ups? Or did we not do
we
that?
never purchased them. We were gonna purchase them. I put it in the budget to purchase them, but we never
One of our
ordered them.
cuts.
So, any kids that are wearing them,
So
they were purchased by the kid?
We
by the
bought them
kids
last year,
themselves, I
remember?
know,
They're like full black zipper jacket pants.
But there was a
Some of them have
private
'em.
parent thing last
Want
year,
them on your
remember,
own,
in the
not
bag?
Yeah, no, it's not those. These are.
So girls' basketball has warm-ups that were purchased by the basketball team, by their boosters, or I think it was maybe.
So are they
Christopher
property of the
I think
Hirsch.
that was
school, or are
Coach
they the
Mack
girls?
bought them.
I'm sorry, what?
Are they property of the school, or are they the girls?
They're the girls. They're not, the school did not purchase them. Their boosters purchase them. I collect them and and issue them out, just so no one kind of takes them with them. Boys basketball has warm-ups that have been there before That was
black
before
ones.
I got there, the black ones.
And then there are some track and cross-country, like the purple pants, the white, are
Those are
those the school?
those are school issued, and then they're collected at the end of the year.
So we never got that generic one we were talking about where it could be used season to season,
Yes, we never bought them.
okay. Which is why they're not on here to be
Yes,
replaced.
I kind of took them off because we never ordered them.
Any other questions for Jill?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jill.
Thank you.
I'd ask you what you take off the list, but there's nothing on it.
No, we just
Question
added,
doesn't apply here.
I just asked her to add to it.
And Aaron
I know, Erin's
added
added to
five
the list.
She's a cost.
Mr. Schaefer, next, we have music and band.
Music.
Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Oh, wait a minute.
You can start with the
Music.
Oh, yeah.
table that's up.
Existing and the new.
So for new materials, one thing that, bless you, that's in middle school and high school is increased money for transportation. And a lot of that is because many of the competitions we go to seem to be spreading out further and further away. New England Regional Championships this past fall was supposed to be in New Britain, Connecticut, and then they had a problem with getting the facility, so they moved it to Danbury, which is significantly further west from us than New Britain. And that's just one example. The other winter example is that there used to be several winter guard shows and winter percussion shows around here. King Philip used to host them. We actually used to host one. And now they seem to be mostly going to the North Shore. So our high school winter guard is actually traveling north twice. They're going to Salem and they're also going to Medford. So just the cost of getting our teams to competitions is increasing as these shows go farther and farther away. The other thing is we're hoping to have the opportunity to go to the Yamaha Cup, which is it's a marching band competition. It's a regional competition held at MetLife Stadium. It ended up being canceled this past year, but we're hoping that they have it next year and that we would be able to go to it, meaning the kids would have the opportunity to perform at MetLife Stadium twice. So that's the other increase that I'm asking for transportation, just because of the regular shows and then that one in particular. And then, so contract music for middle school, just replacing microphone, bass guitar, and synthesizer cables. What happens is the rubber casing on the cables starts to deteriorate, and you just have exposed wires, which is not very safe. Middle school instructional supplies, looking for $300 additional from last year to replace some percussion accessories and mallets. Obviously, with percussion, and kids hitting things, they tend to only have certain length before they end up breaking, even if the kids hit them gently. And then the other thing is a new synthesizer for Mrs. Ryan and her 7th and 8th grade chorus. Hers actually stopped working this past fall, and we were very fortunate that we have a parent who does this for a living, and he offered to fix it for free. But he said that there's several parts on it that are not looking good. So he was able to fix it, get it working, but he doesn't know how long it's going to last. That was purchased when the new middle school opened in 2003. High school contract music, there's additional electronic repairs for high school. A lot of them are parts. It's hard to find people that can fix electronics. But when you do, oftentimes, like we have this parent that does it for free, but he needs the parts. So that's on there. High school supplies music, $2,000 to include purchasing winter guard props now that we have a competitive team again, and winter percussion writing. Now that we are competing with both of those and they're looking very strong, it would be great to be able to give them the tools that would make them competitive on a large circuit. High school other music fees, that would be the registration fee for Yamaha Cup and Winter Guard Regionals, which are at Salem High School. And then my pie in the sky, high school instructional supplies, We would love to start replacing some of our aging instruments. We had to resolder 2 different tubas this past fall after we tried using duct tape, and duct tape does not fix everything. So we were able to fix them, but anytime you resolder something aftermarket, it never gains the original structural integrity. So unfortunately, tubas are, well, they are the most expensive instrument. So it would be great to, at some point, to replace one. And then no new staff or programs. I did put a list of all of the curricular and extracurricular programs that are offered underneath existing staff category.
That's this one.
Yep.
So, does anybody have any, I have questions, but does anybody have questions?
I was just, the total, does everybody have 16,474 for a total of that section? Did anyone do a total? No?
No, but if you did, I'll take your word for it.
Well, I'm going to do it again because I only did it once.
So my question, it's middle school transportation, it's high school transportation. Does middle school go someplace that the high school doesn't go?
No, but there are teams that have both middle school and high school, so the costs are split proportionally based on the amount of middle school or high school kids in it. So like we have, like this past year, 72 kids in the marching and 27 of them were middle school students. So.
But
that's why-
essentially, we're looking for $6,000 for transportation.
Right.
Gotcha. Anyone else? Okay, we got more sheets here. We got.
Next to the historicals.
Yep. So I put together the extracurricular offerings that the music department has and did a 3-year average, this year's numbers, what I anticipate, and then it would be the anticipated user fees for if we had those numbers. I looked at what we had this year for students receiving free reduced lunch that had the user fee waived, and basically it's about 10%, so I subtracted that from the
Oh, gotcha.
estimated total.
And these are the numbers in each one of the programs?
Yes.
Yep.
So for Winter Guard, last year was our first year back with the team.
Right.
The 2 previous years, we just had a training class to try to rebuild.
Split up.
Same thing for percussion, we have a team again, but the past 3 years, we've been trying to rebuild that. And luckily this year, we had a big enrollment.
But it does seem like you're turning the tide back again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're very fortunate, there's a lot of kids that seem really motivated and interested again.
Great.
Yeah, this is helpful to have the snapshot like this, like we had for athletics. Thanks for putting this together,
Yeah.
Todd.
No problem. The other thing, it's not on one of these sheets, I sat down and did the curricular enrollment. So everything from 5th grade band up through the high school offerings, including 7th, 8th grade chorus and high school chorus. And from 5th grade through 12th grade, we have 327 students that are taking some ensemble music class during the day.
What grades was that?
5th through 12th.
5th through 12.
Yeah, starting with
And
5th grade band.
And that's instrument and chorus?
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
And at one point, the 5th grade coming to the middle school seemed to drop significantly. Have you noticed that that's going back up too?
Yes, it is going back up. It's still, that transition tends to be a tricky one. So, last year we had 74 kids in the 5th grade band, and this year we have 56 in the 6th, well, 56 as of December, so I don't know
Yeah.
what happened from the beginning of the year up to December, but there is still a drop. But it's not what it used to be.
Do you have that number for 6th to 7th by chance?
Last year's 6th grade, no, I don't, actually. I only have the 5th grade number from last year.
Just anecdotally, do we see a decline from enrollment from one grade to the next in the music? That just, I only ask because that number, 327, sounds like a healthy number of kids involved. I mean, there's a lot more kids, obviously, to go after, but it sounds like a fairly healthy number of students involved in the secondary music program.
Yeah, well, to answer your question, we do usually see a decline. Just kids that either realize that you do actually have to sit down and practice every so often to get better, or just kids that would prefer to take something else during that same time in the middle school. We tend to see a somewhat of a drop each year. So like this year, our 6th grade band is 56, our 7th grade band is 54, our 8th grade band has 45. So slight drop.
Yeah.
And we've seen that, that's since I've been here, it's looked like that. And then in regard to the 327 kids, I had a couple minutes. What I did is I looked at the enrollment per grade from 5th through 12th grade that's on the state website. It actually ends up being 32% of students in grades 5 through 12 are in an ensemble.
Wow.
That's a fairly healthy, I mean, a
That's good,
third, that's a
yeah,
healthy
yeah.
number of kids.
Yeah, I just remember the drop being from 5th to 6th, and that, but it sounds like it's getting better to me, so.
It is.
And then
there's-
8th to 9th, is there still a?
Yeah. So last year's 8th grade band had 42 kids, and I got 23 freshmen this year, which actually is one of the bigger freshman classes we've had. So,
But that also includes our school choice kids.
Well,
So I
that's-
know,
Well, that's it. That's it.
similar to athletics,
Yeah.
I know that there are many students at BVT who were music lovers, and that was a big decision for them. So, I think athletics, we talk about the BVT-ish factors impacting, it impacts us everywhere. And music is no, they don't avoid that either.
But it's good to hear it's one of the bigger freshman classes.
yeah, it was great.
That's a good thing.
And just on these, just, one was zero funded, and the other was level funded? Is that what the two breakdowns were?
Yep, one
Okay.
zero.
One says zero, and then the other one, oh, it does say level. I
says
didn't
music
notice
zero.
that on the other thing, I'm sorry.
Music level.
It was, I'm sorry. And then are all the stipend stuff are all the stipends in these line items? Okay, all right. So is that the where it says director, that's
Yep.
the stipend pieces? Okay.
You'll see them in the
Thank you.
music level, right? That's where they're, yeah.
So Todd raised an excellent point when he and I were discussing this, and that is that the level funded budget was based on the FY19 budget with, again, a 2.5% increase added to some of the materials. And some of those, in conversation with Todd said you wouldn't actually see a 2.5% increase on. So he may have in his zero-based budget, again, put a couple of things in at a lower cost than they are in the level, because I'd simply applied a 2.5% factor to sheet music, and Todd was explaining that sheet music's not going to go up that significantly, something of that nature.
Okay.
Zero or level? %20 music reduction?
Well, is that one of the offsets?
That was an offset. That was how the FY19 budget was built.
It took us a bit to unpack that. You'll find throughout the FY19, like a series of just offsets. And that was, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, some of those were from user fees,
Well,
right?
those are your,
Is that what it is there?
21,
Yeah, the
24,
24.
those are your user fees.
Yeah.
Too many papers to look at.
I don't know how anybody keeps track of it all. That's why we got Matt.
get it all.
Any other questions for Bud? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And Tammy, you asked if that number in new materials was 16,474, is that what you asked?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Matt was crunching the numbers.
I was just trying to see if I missed any in my.
Click scan. Again, I used to
Yeah,
And
ask him.
but I just didn't understand. So this is.
last but certainly not least, our interim director of
Last-
special education,
Last but most. Hate to tell you.
Ms. PG. We're going to talk about special ed and ELL this evening, yes? Thank you. Welcome.
Hello. So we'll start with the materials. On the spreadsheet that you did get on the budget, you'll notice that we do have supplies that we have every year that we want to maintain. But what I did on this sheet was I wanted you to take a really specific look at our math and ELA, math and reading, because of the proposal that I'm going to, that I put in here. So currently, we have varied materials across all grade levels, classrooms, and buildings, and they're being implemented differently. It's not really consistent. So I had surveyed the teachers and asked them, please let me know what you're using for specialized math, and please let me know what you're using for reading. You can see in math, I got three responses. And then reading, we have a bunch of different things that we're using. Now, I'm not saying that what we're using aren't important as a supplement, but we really don't have anything core to kind of connect these two, so we're doing a lot of different things. There's no consistency from school to school, grade to grade, and across the district. So if you look on the right-hand side where it says new materials and the rationale behind them, one of the things is years ago, we actually had Wilson in this district. I think I was one of the first cohorts years ago that was trained. So we started to investigate. We do have a population of students that we have some of these, but we don't really have a structured program that can be used consistently across the district. We do have Wilson in some buildings, but again, I'm not quite sure it's being used consistently. So I did investigate Wilson, being able to bring that to our district. And for the amount that I put in there, it's actually larger to do an entire cohort. So what we're looking at is there a way to get a Wilson cohort together and get an expert in each building to be able to, to be that go-to person. And in addition to that, what they also sent out that lets you know that they have an introductory course that could be 15+ people in the district. So I said, that's wonderful, but what's that going to get us? And I said, because all I've heard about Wilson is you need to be fully certified, and which isn't the case. So Wilson encourages the introduction because it's a very scripted program, but they also see that having a person in that district, in that building, who's gone through the certification process is also very helpful. But I will let you know the people that are, if this does go through and we do this, it's a year-long process in order to get that, that Wilson certification. So, and in this also includes the introduction. It includes the 5 main teachers in the building. It includes materials for those 5 teachers and a few supplemental things. So I included that in there as one of my budget increases.
And so those would all be special educators that are
Correct.
trained?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And we're looking, like I said, 1 per building as that go-to expert.
Jill, the actual cost for the cohort of 10 is $40,000, but
It's $44,000, yes.
and we're looking to work with other districts in the Blackstone Valley that
Yes,
would,
I'd like to reach out,
Yeah,
because again,
that's
it is a
smart.
very large expense, and I think most districts aren't able to say, oh, yes, we're going to do the entire thing. So I was hoping to reach out, and we already had this discussion with Wilson, because I had a lot of questions for them, and it's fine that you bring in another district to do this.
So like
Yep.
5 from us, 5 from someplace
Yes,
else.
and we would also split the cost, because again, I think the cohort of others who participate in the introduction, it's up to 30, but I figure if we're having another district, we would, we would share that material supply, so yes. So although the entire, they require the entire, cohort, but our hope is to be able to get, some of our staff and also reach out to some other districts to help support that. Because other than that, I'm not quite sure we can, right off the bat afford 44.
So the 20,000 is for the 5 experts.
Yes.
And 15,
And materials.
And materials.
Yes, and like the administrative overview, it's everything, and it also has the introduction to so Wilson years and years ago had one, was step one, Wilson certification. It's also the overview for part two, the overview. So it'd include that as well.
And right now, we're paying for tutoring, Wilson tutoring?
Some. So we have some students that the teams have identified they really need that specific program. And in that building, there probably wasn't a teacher who was qualified.
Right.
Yes,
So
but there are some teachers.
That would eventually, if we
Yes.
had people trained, we wouldn't need
Well,
to.
of course, yes.
Right.
And that's 90, what is it, $90 an hour or something like that to the tutor?
Right.
Yeah, it's an exorbitant amount.
Right.
Yeah.
It is.
How many reading specialists? We're implementing one in the
Yes. Yep.
And then we have one at MES, two at the complex?
We have one in JFK, we have one at AFM, and we have one at MES. It's not that clean, but yeah, I mean, that's more or
Right.
less how it's set up.
I'm just wondering if it would be worth the full expense for us and putting them into it. I just think we should explore that, having that many certified could benefit us in the long run. Then we come out of a year with 10,
Yes.
Yeah.
10 certified, and
30 seats of other teachers to be able to
Right.
get the introductory
Right.
course. If you know.
How long does the
44.
introductory take?
I think it was 2 days for the introductory, and it can be scheduled kind of at our convenience, so it might be good to do it. It could be before school starts, during a PD, but I believe
Yeah.
they're back-to-back days.
I'm sorry, one more time. 2 days? Is that what you just said?
For the
The
introduction.
introductory course.
So
It's a
that
year
would be
training.
the
That's the 30
additional
people.
30?
Right.
Or if we took the full amount for
Yes.
ourselves?
Yep.
I would just like to keep that open as an option for our, I mean, definitely special ed, but our reading specialists are doing it every period all day long, essentially. And could they be the tutors? Could they be the, that backup?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I think, what the design we're looking at, the middle school in particular, are for students that don't qualify for special needs services, but there's still a significant literacy gap. So I think, and again, Wilson specialized in phonetics, phonemic awareness, so it's syllable types and blending, and so not all kids need that. Some
Right.
kids, it's comprehension. They can actually decode very well, and they're fluent readers, but they just struggle with the comprehension aspect. So it wouldn't be right for all kids, but it definitely would be for
It's
some.
a very valuable, asset for the kids
Yeah.
that do need it.
Agreed.
Right.
Right, and to Aaron's, that I was going to say that, Aaron. And, I mean, K to 2, if you can kind of get a reading specialist working on that decoding, you can, potentially, you can avoid the special ed route
Close
if
the
you
gaps
can
early.
close that gap quickly there with a reading specialist versus, and I don't know how we do in this district as far as how much reading specialists and special educators kind of go laterally in and out of the worlds. But if we don't move in and out, then we definitely need both sides to have, that training. And,
Well, I think one of the pieces that I would be concerned if we only trained 5, and somebody goes through a year of training and then says, thanks, I'm trained, see ya. And then we don't have 5. And then where are we? And I don't know that we can put on, yes, we're going to train you, and it means you have to stay with us for X number of years.
But they
But-
can
but
still do
they're
whatever
not.
they.
Right,
yeah.
so,
But we can still make them
Yeah.
sign something.
Right. But like I said, when we got the quote, it was for the full cohort of 10 and all the bells and whistles
That was
that go
44.
along with
Yeah.
it. Yes, it was 44,000. Now, the quote you get is for a certain period of time.
Right.
So, if this goes through and we ask again, that's
it
when.
might not be 44.
It might not, but then the discussion can happen. We were very interested. We talked to you then. This was our quote. Can you meet, can you still meet that if we move forward? But again, this wouldn't be our only. It's just that I really think that this is something that is missing, because we do have some good programs. I'll be very honest, a lot of people like to use the Read Live, Read Naturally, because it does have that fluency, the comprehension piece. It has a piece of the decoding, but we know Wilson is a very much a systematic, multisensory approach to reading, which is, more intense on that matter. Any more questions on the reading portion of it? So then if you look, our math clearly is lacking. It pretty much is non-existent. So when I put down math program, so again, I can't give you the exact cost, because what I've done is I've explored 8 different programs. We actually are, I'm participating in a webinar, hopefully very soon, and by doing that, I can get 30 free seats for 30 days on a program. I think it's called Ascend Math, and I figure if it's free, I think it's great. Why not explore it? So once I do that, I'll be able to reach out to teachers. So the big thing about the math is I don't think it should be one person who looks into things and makes a decision. I want to be able to say to staff, I want to explore these, here's some ideas, you can please feel free to any other programs, really investigate those, and as we did with the EL curriculum, contact the companies, and most are very willing to offer you a trial, because they want your business, and nowadays if we're going to spend a lot of money, it's really great to be able to trial those things. So that would be the goal of that, and the reason, like I said, would $30,000 cover everything? It's district-wide, it may not, but we have to start somewhere, and I think it would be unreasonable to me to say, oh, we need 100, it's not going to happen, but we have to start somewhere, because right now, we're very much lacking in that math piece.
In the 8 different that you have explored thus far, is that $30,000 a reasonable price?
It's a reasonable price to get started,
Yeah.
and it all depends, because some of the programs have just the online piece, some of the programs have an online and a direct instruction piece, and some of them are more of your, just your hands-on direct pieces. I think we need to look at what's working. We know in this day of technology, the kids really do also need to use that, online piece, and the online piece is very individualized. So that's why I'm hoping when we explore these, I want to try them. It's great that I can go online and, how they say, look at a trial. Well, that's great, but I want to see how it's going to be used with kids, so we can get that feedback from staff. Don't want to jump into anything.
So I guess my question is, on the regular ed side of things, we're exploring options for math.
ELA and math.
Well, ELA also, but I think Wilson is sort of not going to align with your regular ed
But we
program.
just purchased
You know.
Envisions.
I'm sorry?
We just purchased Envisions.
So
Yeah, I think, and so Jill, if you could,
Are we
could you,
exploring
could you speak to what you mean by
John
math
Hopkins is
program
looking at
and the
ELA and
particular, are you talking about, if I have
I'm
a
talking-
student that has an individualized education plan for math instruction 3 times 45 in the actual core 7th grade math class, is this for that kid, or is this for a kid that's in a pullout or substantially separate? What is it?
For the majority of the time, it's for the kids who are coming out, because what happens is, we want our kids who are in the inclusion classroom to have that access to what's going on in that classroom. We want them to have access to the curriculum. So when they're in there, yes, they're doing the Envisions, and just so you know, I looked up Envisions, and they really didn't have a special ed component, so I did check that out as well.
They do not? I'm
That's
sorry.
what I was-
They do not.
Okay.
Yeah, so again, I looked online, but that doesn't mean I will not make a follow-up phone call.
They score very, very low in ed reports, too.
Yes.
Like all the research behind it does not bear out super well.
Yeah, but some of the ones that I have looked, I always look for, is it Common Core? And the Ascend one, actually, I put in a call, I'm waiting to hear back. It says, please call us and we can tell you exactly how it's aligned with your state. So that's great, let us know that and we'll investigate it. But when we look at specialized programs, when kids are coming out of the regular education classroom, it's supposed to be specialized. It's not supposed to just be a little bit more of the same. It's supposed to be different. It's supposed to be specialized in our methodology, in our approaches to things, and how we're assessing.
It's not louder and slower.
Correct. So we've
Pointing harder.
Sorry, but it's-
Pointing harder.
I'm going to just say it.
But we don't have, we have some things, but we don't have an actual program. So what's happening is, if you're in 3rd grade, you're getting something. You're in 4th grade, it could be a totally different approach. If you're in 5th grade, now that's not to say that in some of our inclusion classrooms, I know at some of the elementary schools where I've been spending quite a bit of time, they may have an inclusion class that the teachers do, they'll introduce the topics, then they break up into small groups. So a teacher could say, I have this great little supplemental, material that I'm going to use during that time. But we need something when our kids are pulled out, and not just more and louder and pointing harder to what's already going on in the classroom. It needs to be specialized, and we really are lacking in that area.
Jill, would you say, because as we're going through, working with Johns Hopkins, we're surveying the curriculum, they're visiting classrooms the week after break, we're going to get a bunch of feedback from them, and then we're going to go through the revision cycle. Are you looking for something that you could still plug into a core program, or it might be an arm of a core program, or in some?
That would be great. I think right now, some of the new programs that are coming out, they're thinking of special ed last. You know, they're thinking of RTI, they're thinking of our ELs, and sometimes special ed isn't always the first thing some of these companies are. But yes, the big thing is if the programs that we're choosing are, you know, connected to what the, you know, the state curriculum, our core, I'm finding that a lot of the specialized that's what they're going for, because that's who's going to purchase it if it's not aligned with anything. So yes, and I don't want to jump into anything. I think it's really important to get staff to help investigate. I'm not in the classroom every day with all of these students. They are. So they can give feedback too if they're trialing something to say, this is what works, this is what doesn't work, this is what we like about that program, and try to come to some type of consensus. 100% would be great. I don't know if that's going to happen. But we need to do that first before we decide. The thing is, I want to make sure if we go through all of this, we're ready to move forward with a purchase, if that's something that we can do. Because we are truly lacking in a consistent resource that, you know, has been trialed and, you know, meets the standards, and not just a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Anything else particular about those types of things? Okay, the next section talks about staff. So what I tried to do for all of you is just kind of give you an overview about the number of students we have right now in special ed, and that 329, you feel free to check my math, make sure I did it correctly. That includes all of our students from PK up through 12 for our students who are up to age 22 and our out-of-district students. So if you look at there, I did list the JFK, AFM, Millville, the middle school, BMR. 24 is our current out-of-district population, and the number below that, I don't want everyone to panic and say, we have 10 more. No. What we identify any students who is in preschool who does not, who just comes in for services, they're just identified as OOD because they're really only just coming in for services. So that's not a 10 additional we add, it's just how they're identified. So that's what our numbers look like right now.
Are the 71 BMR including up to 21?
Yes, they are.
22.
22.
Yeah, up until their 22nd birthday, right. Once they turn 22, it's done.
Do you happen to know the number?
In our Community Connections program?
Right.
So we have 5 students right now who are taking advantage of the Community Connections program. We actually have 1 student who's going to be turning 22 this year. So he'll be ready to move on.
So if they turn 22 in the middle of the year, bye-bye,
Yes.
sayonara.
The day
senior
before
rating.
their 22nd birthday. Yep,
That happened
That's
in
the
my brother.
Massachusetts.
that's a law,
That stinks.
yes.
Rhode Island has changed. Rhode Island does 21
To the end of the school year.
to their end of a natural break.
Right. But what I'll
So,
tell you is, remember,
or the end of the
before
quarter.
students turn 22, there's a process that we reach
Oh,
out,
yes,
adult
yes,
services,
yes,
right?
yes,
So it's
yeah.
not like,
Yeah, it's not like goodbye.
right, there's something there when they leave us, right, right. But yes, it is, it's the day before their 22nd birthday, it's their
That's-
last day of school.
That still leaves BMR students being serviced higher than, I mean, I guess I would have expected to see that number gradually get smaller.
So
From
the
the
number
elementary years.
of students coming in to the number we graduate always gets smaller. So we're always taking in a larger population of our freshmen, and we're always graduating. But remember, we're also keeping our students until they're 22. So the number doesn't, after 4 years,
Only 5.
But Jill, you
I
had,
didn't
we
think
we
it
had
was that much.
13, we had 13 children move into the communities this summer that enrolled in our high
Actually,
school that have a, that are on
yes.
ed plans.
Oh, okay.
So we had 13.
So that's the difference of that number.
yes,
Erin,
the
did
other
you
thing
hear
that,
No, sorry, one more time.
That's
was
an
that?
important piece.
That's okay. Go ahead,
sorry,
Jill, do you
would
want to?
No, I was just going to say, this year, and I've been here for a very long time, we actually have 14 students enroll here in BMR who came with IEPs.
14.
I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but it really is. We usually have about 5, 6, we had 14. A couple of them were actually school choice, yes, with IEPs, which is huge, because if you look at our requirements in Massachusetts, when it comes to numbers of special education students you can have in a classroom, there are certain requirements. And 14 is huge when you think to have a student in a small group out of the regular classroom. By law, you can have 8 with a special ed teacher, 12 with a teacher and a paraprofessional, and then up to 16 with a teacher and 2 paraprofessionals, which I don't recommend, but the numbers are there. Not all those students were in a small group, but just to give you an idea, 14 may not sound huge, but in the, you know, the special ed realm, it can be huge. So, And that's the most I've ever, in all these years, seen come in one, in the start of the
That's
school year.
scattered through the grades, not
High
just.
school, just high
ninth
school.
Just high
Not-
school.
okay.
Right, I don't have the numbers in the other schools, but for high school, I do know we had 14 new students enroll with IEP, who came with IEPs.
This summer, well, like in summer and at the start of the year.
Yeah, and, you know, the beginning of the year, too.
Sure, yeah.
And those are enrolled, not school choiced in.
We actually,
school
there
choice.
were, I think, one or two who were school choice, and the rest just moved.
So their money comes with them, right?
School choice, yes.
Yes.
Just checking.
We-
Of those
I don't think
14?
we actually have
Yes.
the right answer.
Two.
I don't think we really know the answer.
No, I
It does
mean,
come.
It does?
It does.
does come.
It does.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
That's
this
why we
myth that
don't
if
like
you
when
open
we
up
send
school
them.
choice to kids in special ed, you're going to own it. That's not true.
No, so what happens is, that's another thing I can bring up. I think when I get to out of district, I'll just give you a little preview of that. We do have a student, if there's a student who is school choiced into
In
our
or
school
in,
or out,
okay.
either way, so we have a situation, and when I talk about out of district, that we actually, in our numbers, is a student who is school choiced out elsewhere. When that happens, and that school, I'm not going to mention the town, but if they make a decision that they can no longer educate that student in school and place that student out of district, that school remains programmatic, and the bill comes this way.
Yep.
But when
Yep.
And
that
we don't
happened last
attend that
year, we
meeting.
questioned whether our team chair was present or not.
So,
For those decisions.
it appears during that meeting, at the time, the director was at those meetings.
So we
But
were
we
told
would have a
differently.
place at those meetings.
We do. So we are on the other end of that as well. We have a student who was placed here, came to us already in and out of district, came to us not through school choice, but through another placement, that we are programmatic, and the school that they came from is fiscal. And how we pay for it is a little bit different depending on if it's school choice, if it's foster placement, or what it is, yes. Yeah. But you're right, we are brought to the table. We are part of the team. We have.
So are we attending those
Yes.
out-of-district placement meetings now, as well as the school choice team?
School,
There's
well,
two team chairs?
we have,
Three.
so for out-of-district students who are school choice, the district that is both, the district who's programmatic sets up the meetings, and they invite the district who is fiscal, and yes, we're involved in those meetings. Yes. All of them. We're paying the bill, I think it's important that we're there.
Oh, agreed. No, I agree from
We
that
couldn't get it, we
perspective.
could not get a straight answer on that
But
last year.
it just seems odd that it just wouldn't all revert back to the,
It doesn't, because they're school choice, so they can continue to remain programmatic. Now, if that parent said, no, I'm coming back, I'm still going to be out of district, it would be.
yeah.
Yeah, that's just like if we have a student here on a foster placement and was already out of district, we become programmatic.
Yep.
If I have a kid who's in DYS custody, you know what I mean? We're still programmatic, even though they don't come to school here if they were here before. So yes, when the student was originally placed, yes, there was someone from this district there. Okay. And I'll get back into that after. I don't have to
Yeah, there's
explain it as much.
a lot of
There's
different.
more coming?
There's a lot of different scenarios we've seen to
There is. No, I'm
encountered
just
this year
trying to
with
give you
this.
as much information as possible to, I'm not sure if you have all of it, so just trying to share that. So again, that's the staff we currently have now, and some of the things that we've talked about is we really need to review our current programs and the way we deliver services, because this is an area that we need to see student growth. We can't continue to do what we've always done. We need to look at what's working and what's not. So some of the things that I always think about, I meet with the principals quite often. We talk about, what's going on in the schools, what's needed in the schools, but we really need to know, what do we have for students? And we need to know this across districts, and we all need to know that. I just think some things are just so fragmented right now, it needs to be brought together. And what do we actually do for students? It's wonderful when someone can say, we have inclusion, we have this, that's great, but what are we actually doing for students in this model? Also, we need to look again, programs, models, and staff, what is working, but also why. I want to know what isn't working, and again, why isn't it working? What do students actually need, and how will we reasonably provide what students need? And I did put in reasonably, because that's what we're supposed to be doing. It's supposed to be reasonable. And also, the thing that I think is missing, that I've noticed over these last 5 months, is how do we best support staff? Yes, students are in the forefront. How do we best support them? But I wonder, based on the information that I have and the observation, is how are we best supporting our special education teachers and staff? I just feel that some of them may kind of just be left to do their thing. And I'm not talking about just the supervision piece. That's a piece, but not the biggest piece. It's how do we support them? That's going to be huge. So again, the reorganization, we definitely need to look at and talk about the structure, the programs, and the operations. And our staffing assignments really need to be based on student need more than anything.
And I think that's been probably, to that end, that's been one of the most eye-opening, I think, pieces for our staff this year, is when, we see a need, we see an issue, we'll make a move. We'll make an adjustment. We'll move staff, we'll do, and I think that's been hard.
It's a new concept.
It's a new concept. We shuffle the resources we have based on what the needs of the kids are, and those change all the time. So I think that, as we continue, I just highlight that because as we continue to evolve from the structural piece, which we'll look at next week and hopefully put in place, we're then going to be delving into programs and operations. And with that, there is some flexible staffing patterns that are going to be needed based on where the issues arise. And that, by the way, as you know, can happen at any time. We had to move a teacher in the middle of the fall because we had an issue pop up at one of the buildings, and there was additional support needed, and we moved the teacher. And so, I share all that just to say that I think as we continue to go through this process, we are looking at every facet of special ed, and of course starting with the structure first and then going from there. You'll see next week in my entry plan findings report and in my mid-year evaluation, which are two super lengthy documents, but you'll have by Thursday as we start our one-on-one conversations. Our special ed data is really stuck. It's really stuck, and so this is just the beginning of the deep dive into this work.
Okay, the next section, I tried to break it down even more for you when it comes into the staff that we have currently. So for actually, it says just elementary, but that's actually all. That's a little typo. Right now, we currently have 10 special education teachers at the complex, and you'll see the number next to them is 7 and 3. 7 of those teachers are I want to say regular resource rooms and inclusion. And then 3 of those teachers have more of our specialized programs. And our specialized programs at the complex, we have an essentials classroom, an emerging essentials classroom, and a PLC, our pragmatic learning classroom. In Millville, we currently have 5, and I included our 2.5 pre-K. Those are our integrated classrooms. We have a 0.5 substantially separate classroom right now it's serving students from PK through 1. Again, identified needs. And we also have 2 special education teachers in Millville right now that do a combination of pull-out and inclusion. At the middle school, we currently have 3+, and the reason I say 3+ right now is our team chair in that building is picking up 2 classes to help support that building. There are as of right now, no specialized classes at the middle school. At BMR, we have 6+, because again, our team chair right now is picking up a couple of extra classes. And you'll notice it's 3 and 3, because we have 3 teachers right now for the entire high school, 9 through 12, that does inclusion and pull-out. And our other 3 teachers we have at the high school, we have an essentials classroom, we have an alternative program, and we have a community connections classroom. So those are our more specialized programs.
So, Jill, essentials, so you said community connection was the 18 to 22?
Correct. Yes.
So what's the difference between essentials and alternative?
So essentials are our students who may come in as 9th graders, and until they turn 18, those could be the students who may eventually go into our community connections program. So they're kind of, say that again?
So are they alt assessed?
Some are alt. The majority of students are on alt, but of course that's reevaluated every year.
Sure.
Yep. But yes. that's
You're
the
talking
student
a language
population.
that doesn't.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
so.
relate to the general
So
public.
alternate assessment would
Yes.
typically be students
Right.
with intellectual disabilities that cannot.
And the students in that classroom are more, not your access skills. So access skills are students who, if they're accessing science, it could just be by sorting. These are more entry level. So they might be accessing curriculum frameworks, but at a much lower level, again, due to, it could be intellectual, autism, those types of needs. And they also get a little bit of the work experience, the soft skills, the voc, life skills, a little bit in that program. And so as they get older, they're able to transition into our community program. Anything on the teaching staff we have? So our supplemental service providers, right now, we have 3 speech and language pathologists. We have about 4, I can't tell you exactly at the complex. So we have 1 person full-time at the complex. We have an SLPA half-time who helps out at the complex, middle school, high school, where is needed. And then our 1 speech and language pathologist full-time in Millville, who does all our pre-K through 5 there. And then we also have another speech and language pathologist who works at the complex. She also does high school, and she also does middle school. I mentioned our speech and language pathologist assistant. So just so you know, last year we did have a speech and language pathologist assistant, but it was contracted through French River. And after looking at that, we were actually able to employ our own person at a savings. Yeah, but she's ours, so, yeah. We have 1 physical therapist for the entire district. We have 2 occupational therapists. 1 is housed in Millville and does all of Millville, and our other one does the entire rest of the district. We currently have 3 school psychologists. We have 1 at the high school. We have 1 who's housed at the middle school and does a day or sometimes more depending on the need in Millville. And then we have 1 school psychologist who does the complex. We have 1 district-wide BCBA. And our vision specialist right now is a contracted service because we have a very small population of students who need vision services. And that's just straight vision, it's not orientation or mobility. As our kids get older, sometimes they need more of how does their vision affect them out in the community, getting around. So sometimes those things do come up, but right now we have a consistent need of the vision piece of it.
But, so orientation and mobility is also contracted, right? Because we see that
Will be
sometimes in our.
contract. Yeah, so right now, the
Vouchers.
orientation mobility services that we have contracted are for an out-of-district student.
Okay.
Yes, but that's not to say that things aren't going to come up here in district, because things change when they get older.
Right.
The requirements for the community, public transportation, crossing a street, public buildings, those things do come up.
But right now, we're not contracting for those.
Not in district,
Not yet,
but
okay.
that could come up.
Okay.
And then the other thing which I know there's been some discussion, we have 4 team chairs, and some of them do a little bit of teaching. So at the bottom, it's just, what I put down here is I wanted to give you some idea for our paraprofessional staff. So at the complex, and the reason I put complex and not JFK AFM, because a lot of the staff is actually shared. So just to let you know, within that building. We currently have a total at the complex of 13 paraprofessionals. 6 of them are like your inclusion, a little bit of a regular resource room class. We have 3 total ABAs, 1 who's part of our inclusion model, and 2 who are actually in our PLC. We have 1 identified paraprofessional who is a one-to-one, and then we have 3 others, and those are part of some of our other specialized programs, our essentials classrooms. And again, they do kind of travel because some of our programs, our essentials and PLCs, are across the building, so they go where is needed. In Millville right now, we have 11.5 for paraprofessional staff. We have 4 that are in inclusion. We have 1.5 for an ABA. We have 3 one-to-ones, and our other ones are in the pre-K classrooms. At the Hartnett Middle School, we currently have 6, and they're all, because we don't have any specialized programs there yet, they're either inclusion or they're helping out in a pull-out program. And at BMR, we currently have 8. We have 4 that span across 9 through 12. We have 1 one-to-one, and we have other paraprofessionals who are part of our specialized programs, the Essentials, Community Connections, and Alternative program. The other thing I just want to mention, our PK numbers for our early intervention seem to be consistently going up over the last 3 years. This year, we already have to date 16 referrals for our early intervention for pre-K, which is a little bit bigger. Last year, we had 14 total, and the year before, there was only 10 total.
And
So
that's why Millville's numbers seem to be higher. So I was looking at the complex, you're supporting 114 kids there with 13 staff members, but Millville has 53 students, and you have 11 and a half. So is the reasoning that
For the
it seems
paraprofessional staff?
disproportionate? Yes.
Well, if you also look, Millville right now
one-to-one
has
and the
3
PK.
one-to-ones.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
in the
noticed
pre-K,
that, too.
yeah.
I just was,
Right.
numbers
So it's
that-
not that, we're sending a lot of people at Millville and they're doing the same things. They have, some
Very
of their is
specialized.
very
sure, I mean,
specialized.
I know PK.
Yes, yes.
a very
But our
special
PK
group.
numbers are increasing. And, we have the
Which isn't a
addition
bad
of
thing, because hopefully we can get the services at
Early.
that stage and
Right.
help the rest of the years.
Yes. But like I said, we're just in February, already at 16, so,
Well,
yeah. And on the right-hand side, I know that the principals already had an opportunity to share this, but what's being proposed for next year is, at the middle school level, we do need an essentials classroom. So we have students that will be transitioning up from our elementary essentials classroom, and there has been a student or two who's been identified at the middle school who will also become part of that program. I do want to mention that normally in an essentials program, regardless of the number of students, the students have more intense needs, so we always look for a paraprofessional, but we can make that work within the current staff at the middle school. We are not looking to add an additional paraprofessional when we implement that program at the middle school, just the actual teacher to be able to do that.
If I can add one thing, and I stand corrected at the last meeting. I think, Tammy, you asked if they were taking the alt assessment, and I said no. So I was wrong about that. I think right now the 4 or
Correct.
5 are slated
As of
for that,
this
but
year,
we'll
they
be
are,
reviewed
but
to see if it
yes.
happens next year. So I just wanted to correct that.
So describe for some of us at the table and anyone who will listen eventually.
Yes?
What is an essentials classroom and why is it essential?
Well, all of our programs are essential, but
One would hope.
yes. So these are students in our essentials program have significant challenges. It could be, some of our students might be on the spectrum, some of our students might have some intellectual challenges. And it's across the board, not just in academics. It's going to be, they could have some social emotional issues. They could have some needs with being able to socialize with other students. They are probably at, again, not access skills, but more of the entry-level skills. So the curriculum is very much modified from your, I don't want to call it standard, but you know what I mean, your standard pull-out class or the inclusion class. These are students who need assistance with sometimes behavior regulation, because sometimes things can be very overwhelming for them. Just being in a classroom of 20 students can be very overwhelming. Learning skills to be able to go back into the classroom, to be able to go into the lunchroom. So it's more restrictive, but it's also provides opportunities for students to be out with their peers when appropriate. So they do work on a variety of skills, but it's students who come in with maybe just not a specific learning disability, math or writing. It's kind of encompassing a lot of things that affects them throughout their day. So more significant.
And so occasionally through the day, they'll be in an essentials classroom, but then they could be in a,
So when I say out, it could be, if we have a student, say, excels at technology, they really enjoy that, give them an opportunity to participate in that technology class with their peers. It could be that they're learning social skills in the classroom, and then they're practicing them during a PE class. Or it could be they do need to be supported at lunch, so initially, they may need to have a spot that's lunch that's not so overwhelming, but then they eventually learn the skills to be with their peers for lunch. We have some kids who maybe they're in music. So to provide them with those opportunities when it's appropriate and when they learn the skills. Yep.
And so what I'm hearing is it's not that this program doesn't need a paraprofessional, you're just
We
going
will
to
correct.
reorganize. Okay.
Absolutely. So yes, it does need a paraprofessional, yes. However.
It's not a new
we are-
FTE.
It's not a new one. We are going to take a look at what the staff we have now, and we will be able to address that.
Because if you could do it without a para, I was coming to learn your secret.
no, well,
it will
no,
be,
and just for the record, we have seen a similar proposal here at the middle school without that support, without kind of a one stop wonder
Yeah.
that wasn't wonderful.
Right, so I'm thinking you're talking about the alternative program.
But
So-
I don't know what it was
That's
called.
okay, I don't know the exact
Yeah.
name of it. This is not that program.
Okay.
This is a little different. We've already identified, so there's already an essentials classroom at the elementary, so it'll be bringing students in, and as well as there have been a student or two identified now who would benefit from that next year. And I absolutely understand what you're saying, and that's going to be something I'm going to discuss a little bit more when we get into out-of-district.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Anything on that one? Okay. So out of district. Out of district is a big budget item. You'll notice here it says we have 24 students in our out of district program. Right now, we are making use of 8 programs for these 24 students, which consists of collaborative, public day, private day, and residential. This year, we had one student that moved into district that required a program. So it wasn't like a student who was already here that we sent out. We had a high school move-in this year. We did have one student who went from a private day to a residential. That was our student. We have one student who's still out there as a result of school choice. Again, like I said before, we are fiscally responsible. And then we have one who's out of district that we are programmatic only. So we don't foot the bill, but we oversee the program. And I will say that the majority of our 24 students do participate in the least restrictive out-of-district program, which is considered a collaborative. And we, use the Bi-County Collaborative. So the majority of our students are there. If you look, any questions on that information? So if you look on the right-hand side, anticipated, and again, I can never anticipate who's going to move into district, but we do have a student who is on a 45-day. We anticipate the student returning to district, but it's just something to always consider. We don't know if that's going to change. We do anticipate, and I did receive a phone call this year from not only the district, but the family, that we have a family who's moving into district next year, who is out of district. I do anticipate one student completing his program this year. But unfortunately, the completion of the program and the new movement does not offset each other equally. And we always include, because tuitions always go up every year, so we anticipate our average is 2.5% overall tuition increase. I will say one of our programs is looking to not only increase the tuition pretty significantly, more than the 2.5%, but they're also looking to increase the services, the additional services that are provided. So that's something I am discussing with them, so.
So, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
And I have a feeling I know the answer. But if we have a student out of district,
Yes.
and the facility, whatever it is, private, public, increases to that extent, is there then an ability to look for an alternative, or the alternative completely depends on all those meetings with all those people?
It completely depends on all meetings with all those people. Parents have the right to a stay put, so unless the program, is gone, leaves, out of state, a parent always has that stay put.
Regardless of the cost?
Yes.
We get notifications from the Department of
do.
Education, though, when the tuition increases,
Yes.
and we have the right and attend those
Yes.
meetings.
So
at the
I recently
department.
attended a conference call
Yep.
for one of those, and basically you can give your opinion. We think this increase is a little outrageous. And then, the school says, this is why we need it. And then we hear, thank you very much.
Yeah.
We'll be making a decision and let you know. And I've never had anyone come back and say, we've denied this increase. And I've been doing this for a very long time. I've never seen that.
So as LEA, as the, is that what you call it, Anna? You can't explore other options and then bring and have a meeting and say, dear parents,
You can
this is
explore.
an equal programming, this will fit your students' needs.
So you
As
can
a team, we can
explore.
move.
Well, the team can't move without the parents' agreement. They have a stay put. So we can explore anything. We can bring anything to the table. We can make a proposal for a different placement. However.
And we've done that this year. We've tried that. I'm thinking
yes,
of
we
one
have.
case in particular.
Yep, we have. But the parents have that stay put.
So is there no mediation when
So-
parents in LEA disagree?
So the district could then say, us, meaning us as a district. We're the
person who
local
pays the bill.
education
Agency,
agency.
agency, authority.
Right,
Yeah.
the person who pays the bill.
Right. So yes, we could say, we want a mediation or we want a hearing. So if we have a mediation, the parent, I'm sure, is going to come back and say, my child has continued to make progress, now you want to change their program. If it goes beyond a mediation, we then hire an attorney to go to a hearing, and we're going to sit at a hearing, and we're going to have people from that program say, Johnny's been making progress and gains all of these years, they're familiar, we know the student, Mr. and Mrs. Johnny's parents are going to get up and say,
people.
Here are my progress reports that show this parent is, and now you want to change my child. So yes, we can make proposals, we can pursue things.
I guess my
Mediation
point
costs
has
money?
always been,
Mediation, well, it doesn't cost money unless you have an attorney there. And a hearing, you need to go with an attorney.
so I guess my
But the other thing I just
concern
want to throw
has
out
always
there,
been that the parent stay put is only a parent stay put if we choose not to pursue avenues.
Correct.
So
Yep.
I just want to clarify that, because it's not an end-all. It is a team
Correct.
decision, not a parent decision.
it's a team decision
Well-
to make the proposal.
Right, but
If
it's
the parent-
ultimately a parent decision.
Unless we
A
pursue
mediator
mediation
can
hearing, and
change,
if we go to a
yes.
hearing, and a hearing officer says, yes, you can change that placement, then yes, we can.
Right.
The other thing to consider, there are times before my time that some of these placements could potentially have been a result of some type of settlement, so there is no,
Sure, I mean,
We're,
you
yeah,
know,
we're living with
there are
the
a lot of-
we're
settlement.
living with what it
yeah,
is.
I mean, there are a
yes.
lot of
Yes.
special things
Yes.
that go on.
Yeah.
I get
Yes.
that, but I guess I always take exception to the thought that parents are the only team members that matter, because that is not true in
Right,
special
I
ed
wouldn't
law.
say they matter, however.
I mean, they do matter.
Yes, but their rights
Not the
are.
only ones that matter, you meant.
Correct.
Yes, parents
But
matter.
again, if we're in a stay put, we then, if we choose to go through mediation and we choose to go through a hearing officer,
Burdens on us.
correct. And it's the hearing officer's decision. So yes, you're right. There's always avenues to pursue. Yes, but we are in a stay put unless those avenues are pursued.
Don't, yeah, right.
Yes. Yep.
I think the stay put is through the process,
Correct.
right? So you're not moving them back and forth.
Right. Okay, so again, on that right-hand side, the other thing is we've had a contract with Vanpool for the last 3 years, and they are working very diligently with some of the issues we've had over the last couple of years to improve. Actually, Matt and I went to a recent meeting, and Vanpool, if we were going to stay with them, they're not going to increase the amount of their runs over the next 2 years, which is huge. That's not to say if a new run comes up, but whatever they're charging us right now for whatever run, it's staying the same over the next 2 years.
Mark it in, baby.
That's huge.
Well, they don't want to lose our,
They don't. So there has been some challenges this year, but yes.
Is
yeah,
that
messy
in
this fall.
addition to the use of the vans that are in the parking lot?
So
Is
our-
that part of this or not?
No,
part
it's
of
not.
this?
So
Okay.
Vanpool is for our students. Right now, we're using Vanpool for any student who is traveling out of district. And we also use Vanpool because they're usually the best provider for the rate for our McKinney-Vento.
Okay.
For any of our homeless students.
But a parent can also choose to
Transport their
Transport their
child? Yes,
child.
they can. Right now, we don't, we did
we
have.
pay those.
Correct. Right now, we do not have any parents who are transporting their students to and from school to out of district. So that's one good thing. But again, if it comes on, if another route comes up, at least it'll be equivalent. They're not going to raise their rates for 2 years, which is good. And the one thing I totally want to stress is, I understand that out-of-district is a challenge. What's challenging about out-of-district is not the out-of-district piece. What's challenging is, we really have to look at how do we build our capacity in district so the students are not going out of district. Because what happens is, we did very successfully, which was very exciting, last year, last year, we brought back a high school student from out of district, and he's doing phenomenal. He's participating in sports teams, he's doing a really nice job, but we've also sent students out, and it's because if we're lacking programs, yes, I know we have certain programs here, but there is a certain niche that we are lacking at the elementary level in this district.
yeah, and if
for
I can add to
students.
that, and I think it's in, I know the committee subscribes to the same, theory and thought around this. It's not just adding a person to it.
No.
There needs to be goals to the program, a vision for the program, a process. There needs to be a whole structure in place.
And the appropriate supports. I
That's
mean,
right.
it's just not one,
Not just putting a teacher there.
Yeah, and,
No.
you know, do we have enough social workers? Do we have enough adjustment, you know, whatever.
But it would also be nice is we've worked with BICO for a very long time. And not only have we worked with them, we have some
have them,
programs
yeah.
here in our building. So to develop a more of a therapeutic program, which again, from what I've seen, we're missing at the elementary level right now. You know, we have a resource to go out and observe. We have some of our students who are there. So why not go and see? Do you know what I mean? What's going on and how do we duplicate that? Because BICO does have classrooms in public schools. They do. So that's something that we definitely need to build
Two of
our
ours, yeah.
capacity. We have to do that. We do have programs, like I said. We have not sent a student from the high school out of district who was in our high school in years. But we have from programs to support. So I know the middle school, I know you brought that up, they tried. I just think you really have to investigate what is needed, go and see what's working someplace else, and then how do we make that work here at BMR? You can't just throw something together, because we've seen it doesn't
A room is
work.
not an answer. A room is not.
It is not.
an
It's
answer.
part of what we want to look for, an appropriate space, but that's so small compared to how's it best supported.
Yep.
And the teacher and the training.
Agreed.
Okay, so anything else about special ed before I go into the EL? Okay, so EL was very new to me this year. So I've taken a lot of time to kind of, look into exactly what we're doing, what we need to do moving forward. So we have a spreadsheet that our teachers, we update on a regular basis to get an idea of what we have for an EL population. So if you look right now, for every school, I've identified the students who are actually EL. So those students are English language learners. So those students who have identified from their access testing that they have a certain score that they need direct instruction from an EL teacher. Unlike special ed, their service model, shall I say, the time is pretty much open. They give you recommended times, but it's not like an IEP where it's written out like that. But an EL student is a student who requires direct service from an EL teacher.
And the models can look very different, from push in
Absolutely.
to pull out. There's a
Yes.
whole.
And we're doing a little bit of both right now in
Yep.
this district. FELs are students who are formally English language learners. So those are the students that they have taken their access test. Actually, our students just are finishing this week, and their scores came out to say they have acquired enough of the English language. They no longer need direct instruction, however, required to monitor them for 4 years. And monitoring, as you know, it could be a quick observation, and it is actually a progress report that we send home to parents to let them know how the student's doing. So again, that next row, and I say -1 because at the end of this year, we have another student who's going to be in their 4th year. And then our last one is opt-out. So parents also have an option that they could say, yes, I understand that my child should be getting this service, but I do not want that service. Any student who does do that, though, they have to participate by law in access testing every year, whether they're getting an EL service or not.
So those who opt out are opting out of being monitored or opting out of the initial service?
They're opting out of a direct service. Yeah, you can't really opt out of monitoring, like
Yeah.
you have to monitor them, and they have to participate in access testing. But the parent has the right to say, and we call them in, we have a meeting, we try to get them to understand this is what this means, but we do have students who have chosen to opt out of EL services. So if you look at our numbers, we have 44 right now who are considered ELs. We have 40, it's going to be 39 FELs, and we have 4 opt-out. And right now, we have 2.6 EL teachers. We have 1 teacher who is doing the majority, all of JFK, 1 who's doing AFM and Millville, and we have 0.6 right now who's doing the high school and the middle school.
There's 6 students.
Yes.
We had a paraprofessional.
So at the start of this year, there was a paraprofessional who was providing support at the high school full-time. When it comes to EL regulations, that actually means nothing. It doesn't count as services. And our population at the high school was very small, so we actually had a significant need for a paraprofessional in another building, so we were able to actually make that swap. We didn't have to go out, hire, we just made the switch.
Yeah, I only mention that because my sense is the committee probably remembers there was a para in that department last year.
So we
that
have
never
1 at
counted for-
JFK, 1 at AFM and Millville, and a .6 who does the high school, middle school.
So if you look on the right, I said it's definitely an area that we need to review our model and our staffing needs.
And these, the folks in the EL column, the English Language Learner column.
Yes.
They are initially identified through this access testing?
So what happens when a student comes in,
Yeah.
there's a home language survey. And that is filled out with our principals, and based on the questions, the student has either said, yes, they have had some significant, as their language developed, either access to, they could have, families speaking that language, and that does have an impact. So once that's identified, it then goes to our EL teachers, and they do an assessment. Access test is done at the end of every year, just to see progress, but there is a different screener in the beginning of it.
But the access test is only done to somebody who's identified.
Correct.
So if somebody fills out that form and doesn't self-identify,
Yep.
they're in the district and,
Correct.
Well, some you know, because they're,
Right.
with their EPL level, well, English proficiency level 1, which is they don't speak English. So like you
Yes.
know, right?
Right.
So it's, even if they
Right. And
don't
recently,
self-identify, you can,
then do you
Pick
put
up
them
on
in
Yes.
automatically?
yeah, you can identify.
yeah, so when they come in, they have a
What do I
form,
say?
but they also have a conversation.
Whatever they're saying.
They have a
You know,
what?
They have a conversation with the person who's, the principal or whoever's there at the time. I will say that one issue that we faced this year that other districts have faced in the past is the home language survey that was being used was outdated. So when I came in and found that out, we definitely put the new one into place, which kind of changed. We had some students who were misidentified, and I want to let you know it wasn't just us. I talked to Sibel at the EL Department of Ed on an ongoing basis with questions, and she said it's not just us. So it's because of the way the survey was done before, it was over-identifying students who really shouldn't have even been assessed in the first place. So we did have a few students that was the situation. We talked to our EL student, I talked to Sibel, we ran the process, and we did what was right.
And we, I know the numbers look small in terms of 44 kids, but it is really important to have a very robust ELL program. We just had a neighboring community. I worked with their assistant superintendent to build a program in their district for SLIFE students, which are students with limited and interrupted formal education. So this particular youngster was a 17-year-old, I believe from El Salvador, that his formal education stopped in 2nd grade. So, and still has to pass the MCAS in 10th grade and all those other things. So she and I collaborated and built a program for him at their high school. I share that only to say, you just don't know. I mean, we could have kids at any time enter our district with any level of need, so it's important that we do have a robust.
Right, but I want you to know that our teachers are teaching. That's what they're doing. They're teaching. They're working directly with students. They are not doing other types of work.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions on that?
So we are going to look at this staffing pattern, Jill, at some point to see.
We do.
It's 44 is a small number.
Well, significant, though.
Well, I think the fact that our largest number is in our K to 3 is really going to be the challenge for the next bit. I mean, if they, I think it's 7 years to kind of acquire academic language at the upper grades, but those guys may catch on faster because the other kids are learning it too. The kindergartner
will.
doesn't know the science words either.
Yep.
So that number may pare down more quickly than what your, 5th and 6th graders will take that full 7, potentially the full 7 years to learn the academic language.
But also remember, when we're servicing students, it's not individually, it's in groups. It's sometimes inclusion, it's sometimes, pull out. And I'll know more when our access testing come back. The only thing I can say is this year, all of our access testing was actually done online. So last year, districts were encouraged to start to do it last year's access testing, at least in a small way to kind of work out the bugs. For some reason, our district chose not to pursue that. So this year, it was brand spanking new. And a couple of the conferences I've gone to for some of the other EL, coordinators, they said that initially, when they first did it all on the computer, they didn't see the growth that they expected, and they felt that the technology piece was you know what I mean? It's new for some of our kids, got in the way a little bit. Paper testing was still done for some of our younger students, but the older ones, unless they had some type of significant disability that they couldn't access the computer. So this year, our staff worked really hard. Our technology director worked really hard to, you know, get all of this up and running for our students this year. So they're going to finish this week. They're all going to be done by Friday, and then we'll get the results before the end of this year, and we'll see how they did.
And these students are also built into our accountability system in a very different way than they used to be. You used to get, in the prior accountability system for MCAS, you'd get bonus points. If kids hit their targets and showed a certain level of growth. The department has moved away from that, and they've actually set targets for every single English language learner in the Commonwealth on their access test. So it's basically a 6-year progression. So they have 6 years to exit. And we have to hit those targets, and those
That's how
targets
they
are
compliance
outlined
monitor
on,
us for EL. Yep.
it's actually outlined on their access results. It will say, here's the score, there's the target. So now we can actually, you can wrap your arms around that.
Yes. And I will say, we did have some tears this year with, not our teachers, but with our staff. I mean, with our students taking this test on the computer.
Yeah, it's hard.
We did. Yep. For some of our, you know, not our younger, but, you know, the kids, 3rd grade or 4th grade, a little stressful for them.
Just in connection with this, have all of our teachers done the ELL sort of side training that MAPS?
SEI
endorsement.
I don't know what it's called because
Yes.
Rhode Island doesn't have it, but I know it
Here-
exists.
Yes, here it's called the Shelter English Immersion Endorsement. So those are all, just so everyone knows what that is, it's essentially instructional strategies or practices that classroom teachers should be using to help English language learners. I think the little part that a lot of folks never really talked about in that training is that they're really good for kids that are at the English proficiency level 3, 4, and 5. So your cut and grow or some of those strategies that they teach you aren't going to make a huge impact on your level 1 kid that doesn't know a word of English.
Right.
They need that direct instruction, as Jill was saying,
Right.
around acquisition. Yeah, but the teachers have to be endorsed to be relicensed.
Right. And remember, we just had a nice fundings, when we funded our National Geographics is in. Teachers are using that. That was the, you know, the program, because we were lacking curriculum. So that's been corrected, and they do have their National Geographic curriculum, L curriculum.
I did take the training too, just FYI.
And I think that's it.
I am
Questions?
endorsed.
Anything else?
Any questions? And we're going to see some of this realignment.
Yes.
Next
Next Wednesday. Through the reorganization part of the agenda.
Any other questions for Jill? I truly appreciate the undertaking that you have done. I know that you not only had to weed through what we're doing, but what we've done and what we didn't do and what was missing, and so it hasn't gone unnoticed. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thanks, Jill.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
That was our last piece of this workshop. The next budget workshop, we saved the best for last. It's Matt and me and Sean. Now, we have the
And when
last...
is that?
The last, I believe it's the 20, is it the 26th? It's the last, that week in February. We actually saved the worst for last. It is on February 20, when is this? Let me see. Bear with me 1 second. 27th. It is technology, teaching and learning, and just general district expenses, which is Sean, myself, and Matt.
6 PM.
6 p.m.
The 27th.
Got it.
Yes.
It's a busy week.
So the conversation that I had with, let me see, oh, I do have that in there. Is the kind of the what next. So we have all these folders that have all these, you know, needs, and so after we have the best for last, we need a real last, not a last, but a time where we can have a discussion of, all right, so how do we pick and choose and prioritize and shift and adjust and find savings from before to rob Peter to pay Paul? So I think we need one more after the 26th.
When is
budget
our-
workshop.
Budget hearing meeting, when are we supposed to have it finished by?
13th of March is, I believe, the public hearing. School committee meeting on the 13th. Yep. And we are slated for a joint town meeting again on
March
March
6th.
6th,
So we should really have our number before that.
before then.
Now,
For the-
how
for
are we
the-
going to approach that
Well,
compared to last year?
so we have tried
We don't have many days.
to have the discussion to say, we need to look at a budget that puts it, so we want to look at what we want to put in, what we want to grow, we want to ensure that the district has, versus like taking all of this and saying cut, 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 cut. So I don't think we want to say, it's all in, and now let's chop it down. I think we have to strategically look at it and say, what can we do by shifting other positions?
Yep.
What can we do by, and we've already done some of that in our
Right.
reorganization. What can we not do? There are clearly things, and it's not like it's a cut, it's clearly things we cannot do. Given the level of the budget that we are, given the scope of the picture, there are going to have to be things we can't do.
And are you going to come and with recommendations for that, or are we going to just all collaborate and
Well,
do it together?
All of the above.
yeah,
You see what I'm
exactly.
getting
Yeah.
at about last year?
I think we have to do all of the above. I mean, I think we have to get recommendations. I think we have to, put Matt on the hot seat and saying, what can you shift for us? Where can you find us? You know, where might we have some, we have to look at our cost centers we've been dealing with this year. You know, maybe there are some savings in, well, maybe snow this year, who knows? But, whatever it is, and can we shift that someplace else? That's going to come from Matt. But the whole, these sheets that we've been getting from, principals and cost center managers, we really have to, take a look at and say, we can't do it all, and maybe we just like the uniforms rotate, maybe we not only set a rotation for curriculum, but a rotation for resources, or a rotation for books in the library. How many times do we get books in the library and we still don't fund books in the library? So maybe we set up some rotations. But I think some has to come from us, some has to come from review, and I think we have to have some hard discussions.
And
Well, one of the things, didn't we get helmets last year? So shouldn't that line
So we
already
got 14.
exist
No, we got, what?
in the, from last year's budget?
Yeah, so that's what I asked. I asked that same question too, because just like even curriculum, we got some curriculum this year. So do we really have to add new curriculum, or do we use what we use to
Or is
purchase
that line
curriculum?
already there?
So that's the kinds of things that we have to really take a look
Yeah.
at.
Okay.
And that's why we did both levels, like the level service and
Yeah.
the zero base, so we could actually crosswalk and see what's actually built in here and what isn't, so that we
Okay.
could go, we could get into the weeds on that.
Okay.
And I think Jane's right. I think we've got to look at both pieces. I think also, when we think back to December, which I know feels like 2 years ago, but when we look back to December, at our December 12th meeting, we had some conversation about some, patterns and trends that emerged through our conversations with the cost center managers. We certainly, that isn't the end-all, be-all, but it might be a place to start, in addition to everything we've heard. But it might just give us a launching point,
Okay.
I think to your question, Sarah.
Yeah, just because last year it was a little.
So last year we started with it all, we
We
presented it
kinda looked at
all,
each other.
and then we couldn't get it all, and so then we felt like it was chop, chop, chop. This year, we're being presented with it all before we build, so we have
Right.
the
Yeah.
opportunity to say, can't be a priority right now.
Right.
I mean, it's terrible, it's still, in essence,
Yeah.
it's still a cut.
Yeah.
But it's that it can't be a priority right now.
Right, and we're saying, exactly, we're saying up front, we know we can't have all these things.
Correct.
So what are like the key things that we know we need to build and continue to build?
Okay.
And then probably out of all those key things we know we need, definitely now, what can we reasonably afford? Of all those key
Correct.
things we know we need, definitely
Correct.
now.
Right.
It's a different dialogue
Yep.
than what are you cutting, what are you cutting, it's a different kind of conversation, if that makes sense.
Well, I think it's key that we're prioritizing all of the needs.
Yeah.
Because what will end up happening inevitably, and I can say, I was just at a MASBO conference today, and Jay Sullivan was saying, be prepared for this to actually be.
Share who that is? Not everybody.
I'm sorry, Jay Sullivan is the Director of Finance for the Department of Education. And he
was here
apologize.
He was.
But he was making a point that what we have going on now is various forms of the foundation budget formula being looked at. So it's not just everyone presenting the same foundation budget formula and taking numbers and making them grow. It's people are looking at different iterations of the formula, which can actually mean that between the governor's budget and the House and the Senate, these numbers could be going all over the place.
Yeah.
And what could be happening is we need to keep an eye on what our priorities are, because we're going to need to have our budget set. We may have prioritized X, Y, and Z, but then in the end, if we end up with additional Chapter 70 funding, or if we end up with other funds, we want to be able to go right back to the, to our list and say, again, look at it from a perspective of what can we add back? What can we now continue to add?
So to that point, though, if we finish the budget in a timely manner,
When?
when we
When we
finish
do.
the budget in a timely manner,
And then real numbers come out in July.
and then, and so the only reason those real numbers even played a part in this conversation was because we had such a wacky budget season. So if when we finish the budget on time, go to town meeting, we approve everything, hopefully both towns, first time around, just hoping for the best, we have a number. And then, by the grace of somebody, we get an extra $100,000 from the state on any line item. How do we then use it? How, like, last year we talked about, do we have to shift from E&D? Does it go into E&D at that point? What happens? Because I think that was the confusion.
The towns have to vote the larger budget number.
So we go back to the towns, say this money became available, and then they revote on that number?
The towns have to approve the final budget number.
But
So our
if we had
bottom line
finished last
increases.
year, that would have happened, right? If we had
Finished
finished on time, and everything
and
got
approved
approved
our budget.
nicely, then the state did come with extra transportation money after the fact.
Well, so
Transportation is different.
transportation is different, because
Okay.
transportation comes in
It's
even
a
at different points in
it's
the
a
year. Like,
reimbursement.
sometimes it's changed mid-year. And there have been times then we have so the towns pay that differently, and that has gone back
Okay.
to the towns.
Oh, okay.
So it just kind of depends on when it comes in, where it comes in, how it comes in, who doesn't come in. Tag, you're in.
Well, isn't
I
it
don't know.
that circuit breaker and transportation are reimbursements, whereas Chapter 70 is straight,
When we were-
like, direct
When
funding?
we were at that Mars meeting, one of the Julie, I think, was the facilitator, the school committee member in Wachusett, and she had said that, any time you increase your certified bottom line number, the all towns have to approve of that number.
For transportation, you don't change your bottom line, you just get more of it back.
Right,
Correct,
thank you.
correct.
So to your point regarding E&D, the issue of E&D would be for the following year. So if we end up getting a larger reimbursement than we had anticipated
Chapter
for
70.
for any income, let's say, like a grant, or that we were able to offset some expenditures, or if we have more like our transportation reimbursement. If we then end up with a some type of small surplus, that's when it ends up going into E&D. We don't necessarily have to change the budget because we got more money, because we get the additional transportation reimbursement. Our budget is what we are expending the funds on, and we get an additional reimbursement, then we end up with some surplus. For the following year, we would then have to certify that and have it going to E&D. If it's over 5%, then we would have to go back to the towns and reduce the appropriation by the excess of the E&D over 5%,
Not increase our budget.
not increase the budget.
So,
And that's, so can I just clarify that? Because I heard something, okay, so that's fine. So if we receive $200,000 in additional Chapter 70 money because they're going to give us $100 extra a kid instead of $50 a
20.
kid, or 20, which it is now,
Right.
right? So, and that's coming to us next year. So then we don't need to go to the towns to increase the bottom line. That money's going to go into E&D.
The Chapter 70, I'm not sure.
I think you
Not
spend
Chapter
it.
70.
Yeah, I think you have
Just
to.
Chapter 70, just Chapter
Full budget.
Yeah, I think we have to go back to the
towns.
towns.
If
yeah.
we
it's
would
never
want
happened.
to increase,
It's
if
really
we
never
would want to increase
It's the first time.
what we're spending, then we
Yeah.
would need to
and,
go
and,
back.
and I will say,
But the
I mean,
reimbursements are
That's
are
not what we.
paybacks, and the grants similarly.
And-
Yeah, grants you don't go back.
and while we have had change, like, close to the date, I don't know that, has the governor's budget ever gone beyond the Blackstone meeting? I don't think so. End of May?
This year.
Yeah, we had a year that
This
it
year.
wasn't
This
approved
year,
until July.
it wasn't-
Here
it was
did.
July.
That's
Yeah.
my point.
Final numbers
It's
always,
always-
final numbers
always
always
late.
come out
Yeah.
around July 15th,
Yeah, but it didn't,
sometimes they don't get posted to the 23rd.
They didn't settle the
They got
budget until
changed.
we were into the new fiscal year. I remember
right, but they
that.
changed, but when was the last change made to it, from the numbers that we
It
had?
changes throughout.
Yeah, but from
The,
the
I
numbers
think
we
some
had.
of the issue was that there was a change in all of the administration as well, concurrently with the changes in the budget numbers. So I think that slightly contributed to some of the the miscommunication, which is
From the joint town
from
meeting.
from the joint town
Yeah,
meeting,
'cause I didn't
which
have any
was
sense of what
why
that was
right
all
why if we knew the
night before the
reimbursement
meeting
was
or
going to be larger, did we not do anything? But those numbers, I wasn't working in the district yet, and Wen was transitioning out, and those numbers might have come in at like July 23rd.
Right.
In fact, that is when they came in. I think it was like July 24th.